Kids would say it's dope.
Oh. Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting of the Hopkinton Board of Selectmen for February 5th, 2019. There was no executive session held previous to the meeting, so we'll now open our regular public session and begin with reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. All please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America
and to
the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
It's going to be a long night, Madam Chair.
So we will first have our public forum. Residents are invited to share ideas, opinions, or ask questions regarding town government. Is there anyone who would like to address the board? Please come up to the mic. Very quiet. Okay. Hearing none.
Dog's name?
Titan. He may have a question.
Titan, come on up.
So,
Adorable.
tonight, there are probably a lot of you out there who've been saying this for years, but tonight the Board of Selectmen really is going to the dogs. It's a great pleasure to us, under staff recognition, to welcome the town's newest staff member, Titan, to the Hopkinton Police Department. And Titan is with his handler, Officer Brian Sanchioni, and together they have completed a rigorous dog training. So Brian and Titan, please come up and meet the board and tell us about Titan and tell us about your training, and then we'll get a chance to meet the handsomest new member.
I just wanted to start by saying this was one of the goals for the Hopkinton Police Department, and we were able to obtain a grant from the Stanton Foundation. I'm going to let Lieutenant Porter tell us a little bit about that. Lieutenant is the grant coordinator, and he's responsible for all the documentation, and then we'll introduce you to the man over there.
I'll be quick because I know nobody cares what I have to say.
Yes, we do.
Come on, Jay. Just don't worry.
Once it was determined that we could bring back the canine, obviously we were very excited. I don't know how many of you ever remember the late Hank Fredette and
Yes.
Lucky, but that was my junior years here, and it was an amazing time to have it. So when we were able to get one to come back, the late Frank Stanton Fund funded us for this. They gave us a grant for $25,000 that we can use over the next 3 years to fund everything from training to upfitting his cruiser to equipment for him, veterinary bills, building a home for him at Officer Sanchioni's house and so forth. It's been great for us. All we have to do is submit our quarterly reports on it and continue with the training. Most of the training I'll let Brian talk to you about, but it's been a great asset for our department, and I'm very excited at the station.
And before I ask Brian, I think when I spoke with you ahead, Jay, you explained to me that the town and Titan has been gifted a protective vest. Those run about $900.
Yeah, so the grant allowed for us to purchase a vest, but through a generous donator, had seen Titan on I believe it was a Facebook page, fell in love with him, a gentleman out of Boston, and asked if he could donate the $900 to buy Titan a vest, and it was accepted by the town, and Titan now has his own ballistic vest. We've been very fortunate with the outpouring from the community. We've had another generous donation of Narcan for him in case he ever gets exposed to narcotics in his line of duty. Brian now has a Narcan kit to assist him.
Excellent.
And the donations keep coming in. It's been great outpouring from the community.
Does he have the vest on right now?
Yep.
No,
Let's see.
That's his harness.
this isn't ballistic vest, it's just a patrol harness.
So Brian, can you tell us a little bit about your training? And I know we look at him and say, oh, he's a German Shepherd. He's really, isn't it a Belgian Malinois?
No, so he's 100% German Shepherd.
Oh, he is?
He's about 16 months old now. He was imported from Czech Republic, so he flew over here. I picked him up the next day. And the day after that was his first birthday, so I've had him basically since he was a 1-year-old. And then the very next day after that, we went to our training, which was through Boston Police Canine Academy. And that was just for patrol school, so that was 14 weeks long. And what we learned there was just the basic fundamentals on what he needs to be a patrol dog. Tracking, criminal apprehension, building searches, area searches, evidence searches, a whole bunch of stuff. So we completed that. That was a long 3 months, but we got through it. And now we're currently just started week 2 of EOD school, which is explosive detection. We chose that. Obviously, we have the marathon here. I don't know how many bomb dogs we bring on marathon day, 80 or so. 80. So I think it would be good to have our own kind to represent our town.
And how about for drugs? Is he trained to sniff drugs or will he learn that maybe? Or is that a different type of training?
The explosive side is his secondary trait or secondary learned skill. And it comes down to either drugs or bombs, one or the other. For our town, we chose the explosives. Drugs are cool, but I don't necessarily think we have a crippling drug problem in town. Since I worked here, I've never called in a drug dog to help us out with anything, so we collectively thought that the explosive side would suit us better.
And there's also been a lot of issues recently with canines and probable cause, and obviously the legalization of marijuana, and no longer being able to use it as a probable cause for arrest. So we thought that would certainly suit our town the best in the interest of the marathon and other events that are held.
But just to be clear, like with the Narcan, because I've heard that dogs can, inadvertently end up sniffing, and now, not that they're looking for drugs, but they encounter it, and if they ingest it, then they're going to have the same kind of reaction. So it's not that he's on the search for that, but if he encounters it, and you're seeing the symptoms, this will take care of him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We have the kit that could reverse the effects of an opioid reaction with him.
Yeah.
And it's fairly similar to using it on humans, basically the same concept. And as well as first aid with them. It's pretty much the same concept, treating wounds, preventing bleeding, stuff like that.
But you have to know how to spot it in a dog, don't you? I mean, the signs that they've had exposure are different than in people?
Not too different. You'll notice a clear change of behavior. You won't be feeling right. He'll probably be on the verge of passing out, droopy. It'll be easy to spot, same as it would be with a human.
I always jump in on the questions when I'm excited about something, so I probably haven't done that.
That seems to be about every single bit that we're doing nowadays.
I look forward to meeting this dog ever since he came to town, so I'm privileged. I'm pulling rank here. Who else would like to
If I
jump in?
may, Brian will never admit it because he's very humble. For a secondary school, it usually takes up to a year for the dog to qualify and get into it. Brian was tested right away by Boston PD and accepted in within weeks of the original school. So it's a great team that we have here.
I'm lucky all around.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Hurd.
So a couple of thoughts. One, Chief and Jay, I know these were objectives we had for you guys a couple years back or so when we started to look at this. And congratulations on getting it done. Thank you. It's nice to have a plan and follow through and make that plan happen. So well done. You may have mentioned this, but where's the dog living?
He lives at my house.
At the house, okay.
On the bed.
And how many hours is the dog on duty when you're on duty? So it's an 8-hour shift or whatever that shift is?
Correct, yes.
Okay, got it. So the dog's always with him and not with other officers?
Yes.
Got it, okay. Great.
And it doesn't affect our patrol shift. He still works his regular patrol that he is assigned to, but he is given a little bit extra time to take the dog for a walk, things of that nature, a little rest period, you actually call that, right?
Yeah, and did we set up a vehicle for the canine and all?
And that was funded through the grant.
Got it. Is that another Explorer? Or what do we call those? It's a Interceptor?
Interceptor, yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. Great. Awesome. I think it's very exciting and it's a beautiful dog. And he was yawning a couple times when you guys were chatting, just so you know.
Had a long day.
So, quick question, is he union?
No grievances.
Where's officer?
So I had a chance, I don't know, a couple of months back. I ran into Officer Sanchioni, and he was showing me Titan, and it was amazing, and this was a few months ago, and I know that he's probably furthered his training times 100 by then, but my dog came out of the house and like ran down towards him, and Titan just looked at him. My dog turned around and ran right back into the house. So it was, and all he did was look. So he's a, you know, I know that, you know, Officer Sanquioni takes this very, very serious. I know he comes from a long line of cops, some in Milford, now in Hopkinton. And I think that he's placed with the perfect cop. I think he's, police officer. You guys are a great match. And I know for the town, this is nothing but great. And kudos to you, Jay and Chief, Lieutenant and Chief, for getting this whole thing, getting the ball rolling, getting it done. It's gonna make the town even better, even safer. And I think the next Family Day, you ought to set up an obstacle course and see who can run it faster, Titan or Jay Diana. Because that kid's a gazelle.
I think it'd be close.
So welcome, Titan. Thank you, Brian, for all your hard work getting it done. Chief and Lieutenant, thank you very much as well.
Thank you for your support.
Yeah, he's absolutely handsome. It looks like he's going to be a great officer. It really, Chief, it was great that we got the grants and got everything going with this stuff. You know, I really, you know, Lieutenant Porter, thank you for finding all these grants. You know, this is the stuff that we have to keep looking for. Yeah, you know, ways of funding things through other sources, and you know, so that we can continue to be in the top safest communities in the state and in the country. So you'll please keep up that great work and find us more grants for more fun projects. Welcome, Titan.
So fantastic work. I mean, he's a beautiful animal. And I think it's incredible work that you guys were able to get this done with Stanton Fund money. Couple questions. So you mentioned that he's only smells explosives. Would he, I mean, if he came across heroin, would he know it? Or is it just explosives?
I'll let the expert handle that, but that's, well, not only explosives, you know, not too long ago, remember we found some ammunition in the school. They'll be able to find that as well, correct, firearms, things of that nature. But as far as the drugs, I don't think they would hit on if they're not trained for it.
It depends. He's not trained to smell drugs.
Okay.
He is trained to locate anything with recent human odor. So if we get in a chase or anything like that and someone throws something out the window, whatever it's in has human odor on it, so theoretically we can locate it. But if we were to just do a sweep of a house or a car, narcotics, no, he's not trained to detect.
Right.
Just explosives. Only one different explosive odors that he's being trained for right now.
Huh. And he rides with you whenever you're on duty?
Basically with me 24/7.
Oh, that's awesome.
He's like having a kid, except he bites pretty hard.
That's funny because I have a small dog, and we always joke that if someone broke in, he would lick him to death. It's cool to see the impressive animal.
I have Adobe.
Thank you. This is incredible.
Handsome.
Great addition to the force.
Well, we are just totally delighted with our new and most handsome member of the force, and I, for one, cannot let this pass without personally meeting Titan. So, and I understand it's okay if he has a snack, so if anybody else wants to meet Titan, may I come up and meet him in person? And any other board members that want to, but I gotta get my hands on this dog.
There's one in front of you.
Oh, okay, there we go.
Does he get a badge?
I'll still work on that.
Let's smile for that.
Yeah, we could swear him in and
Yeah.
make him promise me a good boy.
Please don't.
No, we got it.
That's gonna take the cover off.
If anyone wants to give me their Reese's peanut butter cup, I'll lay down too.
That was a good shot right there.
I saw you had nothing, so I said, shit, I better get some sugar in it. Here, Claire. Thank you very much, Brian. Thank you. Of course, Lieutenant Porter.
Goodbye, guys. Thank
Yeah,
you.
just, I'd like to thank you for all your support and always helping us move forward with this type of activities. Thank you very much.
Great job.
Thank you,
making
that was
it
the
happen.
highlight of the evening.
Remember the Titans.
Everything is anticlimactic after that.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, now we'll go on to our consent agenda. Not nearly as exciting. This evening, on our consent agenda are the following items. The Board of Selectmen will consider approving the January 8, 2019 and the January 25, 2019 Board of Selectmen minutes. Number 2, ambulance fund gifts. The Board of Selectmen will consider approving a $200 ambulance fund gift in memory of Rick McMillan from John and Kim Razaza of Dresden, Maine. And 3, the Board of Special Temporary Alcohol License, Project Just Because, Shamrock Shindig fundraiser. The Board of Selectmen will consider approving a special temporary alcohol license application from Project Just Because for a Shamrock Shindig fundraiser to be held on Friday, March 8, 2019, from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. at the Hopkinton Center for the Arts, 98 Hayden Row. Alcohol is being donated for the event. Expected number of attendees is 100. Permission has been granted by the HCA to hold the event, and a fee waiver has been requested. So if we vote this item in the consent agenda, we are voting for the fee waiver as well, unless someone would like to pull that out and discuss it separately. Are there any of these 3 that someone would like to discuss separately?
3, please.
3 from Mr. Herr. Okay.
I'll do 2 as well.
2, all right. So,
Chair, I move the Board of Selectmen approve the minutes of 1/8 and 1/25.
motion has been made, seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. And opposed, that is unanimous. Ambulance fund gift, Mr. Ted Stone.
Yeah, so seems every meeting, I take a minute or 2 to say thank you to these people that are donating to such a great charity. Recently we've had Kathy Gross and Roy Robson as the people who they donating, and as they're in their name. But when I think of the fire department as a kid growing up, you think of Rick McMillan. He was my first chief, really, when I got on the fire department, and it took a lot of time to bring a lot of people far in life as people and as firefighters. So, although Chief's gone from us, it's great to see his legacy live and have these donations given by people from locally, and these people happen to be from Maine. So it's just a great. It just shows what a great person he was. And regardless that he put his, in lieu of flowers, gifts to, the fact that he put it to the ambulance fund is great, but Rick was a great guy, and, he's missed every day, but it's nice to see his name put here, bringing the ambulance fund back into fruition.
And those donations just keep coming for
Yep.
Rick, which says a lot. Absolutely. All right, would you like to make a motion to approve item 2, the ambulance fund gift, Mr. Ted Stone?
I would move to approving $200 to the ambulance fund gift in memory of Rick McMillan from John and Kim Zaza of Dresden, Maine.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That is, of course, unanimous. And the special alcohol license, Mr. Herr?
Mr. Kamalo, the alcohol is being donated for the event as written in our agenda. Is that in line with the lease and all the various iterations of the negotiations and documentation we set up to get the license to the HCA?
Yes, the donation aspect does not contravene anything in the lease, and so are the times for the events as well as the request, the other details of the request before the board.
Does the donation of the alcohol impede or change the requirement for tip certified servers on site at all times and a certain number for the certain number of attendees and so on?
No, it does not.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve item 3 in the consent agenda, a special temporary alcohol license for Project Just Because Shamrock Shindig fundraiser.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor of approving the special temporary alcohol license for Project Just Because Shamrock Shindig fundraiser, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And that includes the waiver we're all voting on. Okay. And opposed, that is unanimous. And so carried. Okay. Now, there is a scheduled posted public hearing. Our next agenda item is the public hearing, which is on Marty's, which is posted for 7:30, so we need to wait till 7:30 for that. Following that are the budget hearings, and I know there will be people coming from the schools and other departments to speak to that, so I don't feel we should move up to that. But we could begin by taking the 9 p.m. item 5, 2019 special town meeting. All right. The Board of Selectmen will vote recommendations on the February 11 special town meeting articles. And, I know we approved these recently. Mr. Kamal, do we
Yes.
need to vote them individually?
Yes, that would be helpful, and in fact, also, I can use this moment to update the board on the Appropriations Committee's recommendations.
Okay, please.
Yeah. With regard to the unpaid bills from previous fiscal years, the Appropriation Committee recommends approval.
Do you want to take these one at a time, and we'll vote it, or are you going to go through the whole list?
Yes, I can walk the board through the individual items.
Okay.
The first item is a bill from Bills and Thomas in the amount of $21,031.24. This supplements a previous appropriation at town meeting through CPC funds to fund the access work onto the East Main Street recreational parcel. And then the Eversource gas, this is a bill from, that came through the Facilities Department in the amount of $2,979.88. Similarly, the following is also from Eversource Electric for $401.88. And then last on the facilities list is the Radiant Cleaning Services for $5,752.24. And then there's also the bill from Miares Harrington for $65,000. This is a bill that came in after the fiscal year closed, and the bulk of this work is in relation to LNG. There's also a bill that was pointed out to DPW from E.L. Harvey after the financial year closed in the amount of $7,800. And then Middlesex Retirement for $2,839.41. Then Park and Rec, here's another bill for $1,051.20 for the Recognition Center. And then the school department submitted a bill for Westboro Tennis in the amount of $825. all of this money will be paid for out of free cash and will be reflected under the FY19 budget.
Okay. Are there questions from board members on any of those bills?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Hur.
Mr. Kamalo, a couple of them were a few $100 here and there, what have you. $65,000 from the areas in Harrington. Can you expand on that a little bit further without putting us in a difficult spot with executive session stuff? Let's just talk,
Yes.
forget about what it is, so much as why are we getting that now, and what, are we gonna be able to do anything with that expense going forward in the way we capture?
Yeah, in fact, we're getting this now after the work was done way back. So this money will be paying for work that was done in the previous fiscal year.
Right,
Which
so
is
why are we
FY18.
getting that bill now? Is it just a
Timing issue.
timing issue, or is it, did they forget? I mean, law firms are pretty good about billing,
Yeah,
right? So, I mean, in business, you have to record the expense in the same period as the revenue, you know, quarterly, that kind of typical CPA stuff.
yeah. This perhaps was an oversight on their part.
Okay, fair enough.
We did reach out to them and ask for an estimate, which is what we normally do at the end of the year. How much do you think you will bill for the remaining X months so that at least we can close our books? And the number that they gave us was off by 65,000.
Okay, and then finally, on the recapture piece, is there an opportunity for that at some point in the future, do you think?
Quite frankly, given our past experiences with Eversource, that is highly unlikely.
Okay.
Would someone like to make a motion? I request a motion to recommend for approval, Article 1, the unpaid bills as so stated by the town manager.
So moved.
Second.
Right, moved and seconded. All those in
Madam
favor?
Chair, sorry,
Mr.
just
Hur,
a
yes.
little bit more comment now that we have a motion on the table in a second. So the $65,000 moving from year to year, pulling into a prior fiscal year basically, is a high number for that process. We typically have $4,000 and $5,000 times 6 or 7 bills. We pay them, you know, we bring it into the current fiscal year instead of putting it in the next fiscal year and so on. So the 65 grand is a lot of money, and I think the residents are entitled to understand that there's a significant, as most of us know, there's a significant LNG facility on the east side of town, and there's a significant project proposed on the east side of town, and there's some significant legal concerns around that we are trying to sort through. So just understand that we don't take I don't take $65,000 lightly, which is why I'm being a little bit of a pain here about this. But while it's expensive and it's highly unusual for us to move this amount of money into a prior fiscal year, it is done in the best interest of Hopkinton to protect our community from a very large LNG facility on the east side of town. Probably all I would say.
Thank you. I think that was very worthwhile being said.
Yeah, we needed that clarification.
Absolutely,
Because
absolutely.
we've been,
That's not chump change at all.
right, this is, well, yeah, and if I may follow on, this is a part of a lot of the talks that we say when we were in executive session, why we have all that time in there discussing how we are going to work with Eversource through legal counsel.
Absolutely. Any further discussion or comment?
If I may, through the chair.
Yes, Mr. Kamalo.
And in fact, in relation to this bill, I have received for the board's consideration a disclosure by Ray Miares and his firm relative to the fact that they have a financial interest in this article, and so the board can make a ruling relative to whether you think they can participate at town meeting in this discussion or they should recuse themselves. Again, the idea here that clearly Ray Miares is a financial interest.
So if I could weigh in, Madam Chair,
Yes, please, Mr. Hur.
it is what it is, and I personally don't have an issue with them sitting at the table during the article at town meeting when this is being heard. I think he should disclose, obviously, at town meeting, maybe through the town clerk or something, and record some conflicts of interest form or what have you, as a special employee to the town. But I personally don't think it would be an issue for him to preside.
If I could chime in as well. To get to the point, I don't think that there's an issue with him being present. I don't think there's a need for him to recuse himself. But I think also as an attorney, you know, he has his own ethical requirements, and kind of separating his financial interest from the town's interest. So I think we can count on Ray to respect those boundaries, and I don't think there's a need to recuse.
So, Mr. Kamala, would you communicate the board's opinion to Ray? That we feel that he certainly can be there, and it would be wise if he just gave a brief statement, as Mr. Herr indicated, to just explain to the best of his ability the circumstances.
Yes, we will.
Okay.
Yeah. And in fact, he has completed that form, and we can share it with the board, just as an FYI.
Okay, that motion has been made and seconded. If there is no further discussion, I would, all those in favor of Article 1, the unpaid bills, as Mr. Kamalo has earlier described, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And opposed, that is unanimous to approve that.
Sorry,
So-
Madam
sorry,
Chair,
if I may-
what was the
Yeah.
motion again?
The motion would be to recommend approval
Okay,
on
got
the
it.
unpaid bills.
Great.
Yes, if I may the board also consider another motion that as the appointing authority of town council, and is required by Mass General Law, Chapter 268A, Section 19, the board has reviewed the particular matter regarding Ray's financial interest identified above, since he's a municipal employee, and that the board has determined that the financial interest is not so substantial as to be deemed likely to affect the integrity of the services which the municipality may expect from Ray's office.
Excellent.
So moved.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded, as stated by Mr. Kamalo. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, that is also unanimous. Good, thank you for that. Article 2 is the Lake Maspinock Dam. Mr. Kamalo, would you like to speak to that and how much money is being requested and why?
Yes, this is a supplemental appropriation for the repairs of Lake Maspinock Dam. Back in 2017, Article 19, the town meeting voted approximately, I believe, $140,000 for the repairs, assuming that number, the original number, assumed that the town was going to be able to lower the dam level to a manageable level. I think in my discussions with John, what then happened was, as the project review progressed, it became clear that lowering the dam level substantially would impact the surrounding wells. And therefore, work now has to be conducted with much more water in the dam than was originally planned. And the request now is for an additional funds that will bring the project total to $250,000 for the repairs to be conducted.
Damn, this is not the weed management program.
No, this is not the management program. This is the dam. Yeah, Yeah, actually the work that has to do with the gate at the dam.
So is the request for 110? You said 140 had been voted previously, so it's a total of 250? So it's only for 110?
No, in fact, the original appropriation was for 110.
Oh,
The current request is for 140,000.
it's the other way, okay.
Yes, that will bring the total up to 250,000.
All right, it was 110, and now they're asking 140. Okay, total.
An additional 140.
Additional 140 for a total of 250. We've already got the 110.
How do you get to become one of these estimators? Flunk out of toll booth school? I mean, they say we're gonna cost 110, now we're gonna lower the water a little bit and more than double it?
Yeah.
Jesus.
That's dangerous work.
I don't care if it's dangerous work. There's these people that are telling you how much it's gonna cost should know what they're talking about.
The craziest thing about this whole discussion is, we got the dam for $1.
That was a bargain.
Whenever you get something for $1, look out. We talked about that when we got it for $1. We
We
talked
don't own
about
the
the
water.
dam, and here we are. You know, it's crazy.
Does anyone else think it's a little odd that their initial estimate was 110, and now it's, like, who are these people that are making these estimates?
I don't know.
How do you not look at that and say, now we're gonna have to lower the water, not lower the water enough, and it's gonna cost us a little bit more? I don't understand. I mean,
I'm sure Mr.
everybody-
Westerling at special town meeting is going to have to stand up and speak to
Yeah.
that very issue.
Okay.
But I mean, clearly, if it's something that's going to affect people's wells around the lake, that's not acceptable. So,
So then what if we didn't do the work at all? We save 110.
That $1
The-
will come crumbling
Yeah.
down.
Yeah, there's a master plan that was put together for the repairs to the dam. This work is identified in that master plan. And also, this work is identified under the dam safety report that the town received, and now must be
The which
undertaken.
again?
Dam safety.
The dam
Dam
estimate,
safety report.
dam estimate was pretty off. And it's like these damn people should be damn weathermen. That's how accurate they are with their estimates.
I think we've beat this now.
I'm losing
What
control.
was the damn question?
Other
Chair.
damn questions.
Through the chair. So are they putting,
Get us on track again.
is the idea here to put up a temporary dam and then repair the dam and then remove the temporary dam? Is that how, I mean, what is the idea here?
That's exactly why it becomes more expensive now,
Okay.
because they have to,
They have to drive in the pilings to make sure it holds the water back, and then they were able to work in the dry area around the dam, and it holds it, yes. That's why the cost is, because they get up in pile drivers and everything else, and stuff has to work in the water and all that, so it's the movement of equipment and the setup is where the cost comes
So
in.
basically, we're building 2 dams. That's why we.
The temporary dam, yeah.
Yeah, so that's why the cost goes up. Okay,
That's how they do it.
that's how it's done, okay.
All right, well, I'm not gonna, we'll just let the town people decide that, whatever they
Are we
decide.
through with damn questions?
Please clear the language.
What's the motion?
So I request a motion to recommend approval on Article 2, the Lake Maspinock Dam.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, that's unanimous on Article 2. Article 3, Fire Communications System. And I see the chief here and Mr. Kamala, who would like to speak to that, or both of you, if it suits
Yeah.
us.
Yeah, in fact, it needs to be said that this project is almost the first of its kind relative to Verizon's request that towns discontinue the use of copper wires. And I recall vividly that when the chief came before the Board of Selectmen, the Appropriations Committee, CIC, that he did explain back in 2018 that for the most part we will be designing this project as we build. And that is the reason why the amount of the project has gone up by 57,750, and we're requesting town meeting vote to approve this appropriation so that we can complete this project. It is related to public safety. And again, the explanation is that this is the first of its kind, and we're designing as we build.
How much money is this for? Do we know?
The additional amount is 57,750, and that will bring the total for the project to 157,750.
1,750. Okay. Are there questions on the part of the board? Is there anything the chief would like to add?
I think it was presented to you perfect.
It is what it is. Okay. All right, then I will request a motion. This is on Article 3, Fire Communication System. I request a motion to recommend approval of Article 3.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, that is unanimous. Before we go to Article 6, where did Article 4 go?
Article 4 is there.
Liking?
Yeah.
Oh, well, it's not listed here. Okay, I've just got the motion sheet. Okay. Okay, so Article 4 is the TIF agreement for Lycan, which is the main reason that we're actually at special town meeting. Does the board have any further questions or any discussion at this point, or are we ready to just move to approve Article 4 for the Lycan TIF agreement?
In fact, the board already did.
The board already did. So,
Is that why it's not on there?
yeah, why is this not on here?
Exactly.
I don't know.
Is that what we did on Friday?
Yeah, remember the vote that the board took at its last meeting
Did on Friday.
specifically recommended to.
Okay, so
Exactly.
this was taken care of in that, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, then we're not going to go over ground that's already covered. So, we move on to Article 6, the School Department Stabilization Fund. I request a motion to take no action, and there was Article 5 as well, which was a same iteration of that. Has that been just pulled, Article 5?
The school committee.
The school committee voted
Can we
to.
pull that out? Okay.
Yes.
So Article 6, yeah, I didn't bring it with me. I thought I was going to have it right here. Yep, okay. Any comment on the school department stabilization, or my understanding is that's just going to be taken up in May, probably?
Correct.
Do we have to vote to take no action?
Yes.
I'll make a motion to take no action on Article 6, the School Department Stabilization Fund.
Second.
Okay, moved and
Question.
seconded. Mr. Herr?
So is the school committee in line with this situation?
Yes, and in fact, the school committee already voted to take no action on Article 5.
Also,
Okay. All set, anyone? Okay. So, all those in favor of Article 6, School Department Stabilization Fund, recommending no action, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And opposed, that is unanimous. Okay. All right, good. So, we've got 10 minutes. Don't know if we want to get into our own annual town meeting articles. Mr. Khumalo, can you do the town manager's report in 10 minutes, or do you want to hold that till later?
I have no new updates tonight for the board.
You
under
need
the
to
town
string it
manager.
out for at least 10 minutes.
Liaison reports, and I'll get right back to you.
All right, nothing for the town manager.
We just met before, so...
We'll try.
Oh, you got one?
I'm looking for 10 minutes worth of filler here. Okay, let's move on to liaison reports then. Did you say, Mr. Tedstone, you had a liaison report you wanted to share?
I don't know if it's a liaison report, but Saturday I went to the Friends of Hopkinton had that ham and bean dinner down at the Woodville Rod and Gun Club, and it was a resounding success. It was great to see a lot of the people from there were a lot of people from the senior center. It was cute seeing them sitting right down the middle. And there were multiple generations of people in town that went to it. It was a very well put on meal and event. There was some karaoke, and the Click family again has dominated the karaoke. And the proceeds went to a wonderful, the foundation that's doing the fireworks and the family day and everything like that. So it was funny because when I'm there, I certainly wasn't thinking I was there as a selectman, because these are all the people that have been my friends and my parents' friends and my kids' friends, and it was more of a social event, and it was very wonderfully put on, and I thank you for the invite, and it was a great time, and it was fun to have Louis Mongeard that 100 yards away from me, so I couldn't hear him talk and complain about everything that was going on.
I missed the Beatles. I heard that was fabulous.
Those were great, as
I can't
always.
wait after that.
Dale, do you want to say anything about that, or?
No, it was very well attended. We were, happy so many people showed up. Like I said, a lot of different generations. We haven't got the numbers all compiled yet as to what we made, but we're not trying to make a lot of money. We're just trying to do stuff for the town throughout the year, other than just and culminating on September 14th.
Yeah. Yeah, and those fireworks that you guys put on they're no different than what you'd expect when you go and spend the day at the in Boston
Yes,
on
but
July 4th. They're just absolutely unbelievable. And
For your birthday.
for my birthday, yeah, for your birthday. So it's a great group that's totally in this for the good of the town. They don't stand to benefit themselves personally at all on this, and they just give hours and hours and hours to the town, and it's how the town used to be, and it's nice to see a little flicker of that candle that still remains here. So thank you very much, Dale, and Pat O'Brien, and Mr. Witcher, and everybody else involved there, whoever I'm forgetting.
Yeah, that's a really hard-working group. A couple years ago, when they were planning the first Hopkinton Fun Day or Family Day, I went to a lot of the meetings, and people worked so hard in between getting things done. It's just, and what they do on a shoestring budget is just amazing. Just amazing. So these fundraisers are just great. Rod and Gun Club is a good place to have it, too.
Absolutely.
Anybody else?
Yes, Madam Chair. Last Saturday, Madam Chair and I were privileged to attend the Hopkinton Chinese Association Chinese New Year celebration at the Hopkins Elementary School. And it was a wonderful event. We got to see dances from the kids, performances from the kids, from the adults, everyone on up. And what was really neat about it was the food. The food was all homemade. It was not your Chinese restaurant takeout type of thing that I am used to. It was all homemade, authentic food from families throughout Hopkinton. And it was a wonderful opportunity to really celebrate the diversity of the Chinese population here in Hopkinton, and see their cultural events up close and play a part in it. And we were treated wonderfully, really wonderfully. So I just wanted to say thank you to the Hopkinton Chinese, the HCAA, for inviting us and for hosting such a wonderful event.
I went to the Metro West Regional Transit Authority Board meeting recently, and took care of a couple things there. One is the Executive Director, Ed Carr, one of his colleagues may be reaching out to Mr. Kamalo and to Amy, specific to how we can get some improved service in town, in particular for our seniors. So Amy, kind of stay tuned there. I'm sure you'll be hearing, I mentioned that we had everything organized here, and that and he said he would get in touch. So I expect that would happen in the next few weeks. Thank you.
Excellent. And I, too, want to mention this wonderful Hopkinton Chinese American Association New Year's celebration that both Mr. Nesrell and I went to on on Saturday. I had fully intended to do both, to get to that and then sneak out and go to the family karaoke night, but I got so wrapped up in the dragon dance and the fan dances and the children playing the violin. It was an amazing celebration, probably 200 or 300. I had no idea we had that many Chinese residents in town, and of course, food that just went on for miles. I had no idea what I was eating. I just ate it, and it was wonderful. And it was just delightful, and they're so happy to be a part of this community, and we're just so delighted to have 2 selectmen and the superintendent of schools come and participate, and we got the sneak preview of the 2 dragons that came all the way over from China and are going to appear at the Elmwood School International Day in a couple of weeks, and they will steal the show, I guarantee you. So anyway, we were very, very grateful to be included. It was a wonderful event. So that's it on that. We're shy about 4 minutes. I know Elaine's here, at least taking note of whatever. Do we have future board agenda items that anyone would like to toss out that we can take at a different time? Or not?
So we still have not got the latest and greatest on our downtown corridor project. I think we've talked about that before. I know we get regular updates, but we haven't had a regular update in a while, so I guess they're not that regular.
Yep.
But I'd sure like to know how we're doing there.
Okay.
I think, with regard to trails,
Trails.
I know we've decided to form the committee, just wanted to get an update on where we are for advertising committee members. And the progress there.
So, now we just got the Trails Committee put together, but you're looking for an update on Upper Charles or on, not sure.
The Trails Committee that we
Yeah.
just formed, to just get just an update on where we are as far as advertising for members and how is that moving forward.
I'm assuming that's been posted, has it?
I can share that we are advertising and people can apply.
Okay,
We have received some already.
excellent.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. And on that other topic too, I know there were some emails back and forth about some of the work that's going on to that Upper Charles Trail connection by McDermott Path. I got the impression that most of that work will be stopping now until the spring, but that there was some very difficult rock surface encountered, which is why there was a lot more activity than I think the neighbors expected. But from what I understand from the Upper Charles people, that's going to be shut down now till spring. So, anything else? Okay, well, let's just take about a 2-minute breather here then before we move on to our 7:30 public hearing.
Didn't print.
What do we have left here? We just got.
We're going to do our budget and Marty's, and then our town meeting, annual town
Annual
meeting.
town meeting, okay, so I wasn't sure if we could have done.
Just a couple seconds longer. Oh, yeah, there's some signatures, guys. You want to do the signatures now? Sure. There's 2 of them.
My clock says 7:30. That was this one. Award process.
Big guy's not here, so let's sign these and then
I
we'll
think I
get ready.
have blue ink, maybe I'll
We just lost Brian.
Mine?
Do we?
down.
There are
So I got this energy usage monitor. It's really cool. It kind of senses like what each device is. That's what I'm on anyway. Really neat. I was concerned with solar. This is
Okay, the hour being 7:30, we should open the public hearing, but I'd like to just hold 1 minute for our last selectman member to come back and the town manager. Okay?
So Rachel, we have a couple minutes to kill. We thought you'd bang out some karaoke.
Absolutely.
Did she sing on Saturday? No. No. Oh, payoff.
I'm in on that.
Uh-oh. Kind of sketchy.
Clerk's not here, is he?
He is. You didn't see that.
Actually, Connor, I have to ask you a question.
Come on, we need to open the public hearing. Brett.
I'm not going anywhere.
There's still three of us. We can open the public hearing. Madam Chair, I'd like to open the public hearing.
All right.
Post the public hearing for the annual entertainment license of Marty's at 61 Main Street, Hopkinton, Mass.
All right, you were making a motion? Yes. All right, second, moved and seconded. All those in favor of opening the public hearing, please say aye. Aye. And opposed, that is unanimous. It is now open. So this is a posted public hearing, annual entertainment license for Marty's, 61 Main Street, Hopkinton, Mass. The Hopkinton Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing relative to an annual entertainment license application from Rachel Werrick on behalf of Marty's at 61 Main Street for outdoor public entertainment, including amplification systems for several outdoor events to be held in the grounds at 61 Main Street. Such events may include a food truck event, an annual spring fling, an annual Oktoberfest. 100 or more patrons may be expected for some events. And Rachel is here. Would you like to speak to that a little bit? And then we can ask some questions.
So, as many of you know, we have, as our business has grown here in town, we've been doing some events in the spring and in the fall, and we'd like to expand on it, and it has been suggested to us that we get a license for this now. So, here we are. And when we do these events, we usually tie it into some type of charity, whether it's in town or a bigger charity, which is also very important to us.
I have a couple questions, but other members of the board first?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, Rachel, there were a few notes that I noticed that came down that people were concerned about parking and all that. Will that be taken care of in the future?
Absolutely, and the events grew much bigger than I was anticipating, so now I can predict it in the future as our business has grown, so, which is all very positive.
And I also want to say thank you very much for putting these events on, and and thank you to Marty and his organization for allowing you to do these charity events that help a lot of needy charities here in town. So thank you very much.
Mr. Herb?
So, to be clear, we have a license in place today for Marty's to operate as a liquor store.
Retail establishment, yes.
Retail liquor store. And this is a license above and beyond that, going outside basically to the parking lot to those events that are held outside.
So we can do it entertainment.
Okay. And this allows them to go out and do the entertainment, and it doesn't impact their license area you have in place.
Correct.
Does this change any of the numbers that we have for these licenses for others in any way? Would this be a license that would limit somebody else from doing something that doesn't have a license today or anything like that?
No, it does not.
Okay.
There's no limit to annual entertainment licenses.
Okay. I'm not asking because I'm opposed. I'm just making sure we're clear on what's going on. Okay. I'm good, thanks.
Members?
Through the chair?
Yes.
So this is both a license to serve alcohol and entertainment?
So I just want to be very clear on the alcohol part. Legally, and I'm very strict about this at the store, and we've never had a problem, and we won't have a problem. We are legally only allowed to do taste, which is an ounce. And that's all we ever do, and that's all my vendors ever do. Any of my vendors that ever pour will lose their tip certification. I can lose my tip certification, and I can lose my license here in town. So we're not serving alcohol to drink. It's the Spring Fling and the Oktoberfest are tastes. When we did the holiday stroll with Hef in the hallway in our common area, those were all tastes. If we're looking into doing a food truck event with multiple bands, and this is very much in the planning stages, which would be held in the back of the building. Right now, there's some snow there. That could potentially be consuming beers, and that's going to be for a pediatric charity.
And would you be then applying for a different license?
If we do that, that will not be tasting. That would be a day different license.
Okay.
That you get to see me again. Sorry.
You're welcome anytime. So I think you answered this already, but the events are all held in the back half, in the back lot? Or
We've been doing them in the front, and as Mr. Catino has brought up, the parking, we now need to move them in the back because they have expanded so much, which is terrific for everybody, the town and for us. So we will be moving them in the back. We've spoken with Crosspoint, and everybody's okay with it.
Okay. And just the numbers, I think you're saying it's less than 100 people?
No, it's more than 100 people.
Okay. I was going to say, that doesn't sound...
Right. I mean, if it's just 100 people throughout the day, that's not a problem with the parking in the front, but just as an example, the Oktoberfest back in the fall, when we were raising money for Canty Underdog Scholarship, the front just got so congested. And I just didn't foresee the amount of people, which was great.
Yeah.
It was a great party.
It was, and we honestly, just a side note, we raised over $5,000 for Brad.
Great scholarship, too.
Thank you, I'm all
Yes.
set.
So, first of all, just Marty's in general has been a great addition. They've supported so many things, every single event that they supply, to my knowledge, has been well-run. They've really joined with the community and been a good addition to us. And, clearly, all these events, the types of things you want to do are just great community events. You've just been great community partners. And so I think that's wonderful. Nobody can be opposed to that. And you should probably know that we also received a very kind letter of support from Mr. Jason Mahan of 20 Grove Street, speaking to what a fine organization you have and how well you run your events. So, that's the backdrop here. Having said that, however, I do have some concerns right now where we are, and, this is not a one-day license. This is an annual license, so it's giving, open opportunity for any number of events. So I think it's important that we get all the proverbial ducks in a row and make sure that we have a pretty good sense of how these events are going to run. And clearly, each one might be a little different, but, where you're working with Crosspoint and their commercial needs, you've probably got a pretty good sense of where you're going to put these things in general. Now, my understanding, because there was a little conflict here on the application, but you clarified that it is not on Sundays.
No,
Right.
we are not doing anything
Right.
on Sundays.
So I would assume that anything that was issued, it would state not Sundays, because the application had Sundays checked, but then you said no, so.
No Sundays.
So that would be made clear. But Now, the police had a number of comments in their permitting comments, which I think are things that I personally would like to see accommodated and lined up before, you know, you're off and running. Your first event might be end of March. I don't know, it's be pretty darn cold at the end of March, but in any case, we do have some time. You know, the police department says, while the police department is not in opposition to the entertainment license, however, we would request that some restrictions/stipulations be put in place. Last year, some of their events caused traffic congestion in the downtown area, as well as the blocking of handicap spaces in front of the CVS. There was no communication or notice to the department, and we fielded complaints of the parking and the noise. There was a band last year. We would request that the organizer notify the police department and the fire department at least 2 weeks prior to any planned event. We would request that they submit a plan for the event, including a map of the location, a time frame of each event. If the event is over 100 participants, we would request that they meet and provide a parking plan, a safety plan, and discuss the need for any detail if alcohol is involved. And another thing that this board has come to request in recent years is litter control. And although when it's an interior, you know, inside event, that's kind of taken care of. Where this came from was particularly events that are held outdoors in a sort of public or semi-public area. We had one up at the Common a couple of years ago. I think one of the members of the board actually and his kids went and picked up everything that was left behind, which is why, you know, these are the kind of situations where it's kind of an open public area where you want to make sure, and I'm sure Crosspoint wouldn't want their parking lot to be left littered with trash, but nonetheless, that's why we've gotten into this asking a litter control plan. From what the police have said, I think you could probably provide a general map location, give or take each event, for where most of the stuff's going to be down this end, how you're going to handle the parking so that what happened last year with CVS being blocked isn't. The safety plan, I'm not sure quite what the safety plan entails, but it's something that our first responders have requested. I think a lot of these, you know, if there's any traffic control issues, you're going to be having entertainment that is outdoors. It's in a residential area, a clear understanding of what the hours might be, give or take, that it wouldn't go later than this time. I don't know how many people you have had, but, you know, 100 is one thing. If it's 200, you kind of get into another level. I am just not comfortable right now where this is kind of a full-term annual license going forward with that tonight without a couple of these very definite planning pieces being on record. And that's just my opinion. I feel like this board is granting something that's too broad without some of these very important pieces, which can easily be put in place, being put down. Because it's not one event, it's for a whole year. And I think a lot of that stuff is pretty generic, and it's good that, you know, it be thought out ahead of time. So that is my concern, not at all about Marty's or about the kind of the events, but that everybody be protected. There's a reason that these licenses have to come to this board, and this board has to approve them, and why we ask for these permitting team comments, so that the different boxes get checked and we make sure. It's very hard once an event gets going and there's a problem to pull it back. I know there was a road race last year and the fire chief had a terrible time. It was in the middle of the event. It's like, there's nothing I can do except just keep my head down and hope that, you know, nothing happens. So we don't want to do that. So that's my feeling. And other board members can weigh in. I don't like to be the sour note, but I would like to see this postponed to perhaps the next meeting and get some of these details nailed down.
So if I may just speak on a couple of things that you brought up, with the congestion on the front of the store and the blocking of handicap spaces, all the events are now moved in the back, so that's not going to even be an issue. Litter has never been an issue. Myself and my team have always cleaned up. That trash has never been a problem.
Yeah.
And if the police and fire department need a diagram and a plan, that, I never, and this is on me, because it's my baby down there, I didn't know, it was my naivete of not knowing to submit this.
Well, and to answer that, some of the other applications that we see, in fact, the one that was approved for the Shamrock thing, there was a map included that showed where where this is gonna be, where that's gonna be.
That's only for liquor, though, usually.
No, but applicants write out what they're gonna do, including the litter control. And I guess, it's not that I'm not trustful, but that's why we do ask for those things, so that.
It's a different license, though, Madam Chair.
I know it's a different license, but the items are items that we need to make sure are going to be properly addressed, and one of the ways to do it is to have it all documented ahead of time.
So if I may.
That's my concern.
So this is an annual license, so this is similar to a license. Can you tell me another license that we have in town that's similar to it? Can you name me so let's say, is it Start Line or Central House?
No, this one is slightly different. I'm just thinking perhaps what might come close to it is a parade permit, where the only difference being, in this case, I think as the chair is pointing out, this is going to be for a year with some events that some of them have been identified, some are yet to be identified. What I understood, and the chief is gone. I was hoping the chief was still here, the police chief. What I understood from the police comments is that they've identified things that they would like to discuss with you at least 2 weeks before the event.
Yeah. So that's on there, and then it said, Rachel had responded, I will follow up with the police and inform them 2 weeks in advance. So it looks like, to me, what they've identified as issues, the parking was an issue. They're moving it in the back. It was the first time they did it last year, and they probably didn't know that they were going to run into, the amount of people that they did. So now they've secured the back. The litter, I think that the litter issues, this is where they live, this is where their business is, so they're not going to allow it to the litter to fly all over the place. So with the issues that that the police brought up, I think that Rachel has been amenable to discussing it with them in advance. And I don't think it's like a parade permit, because people that are having the parade permits don't have it at their place of business. So this is an outstanding business in town that wants to kind of deflect some of their business and give back to the town, and not have to come up to us 4 or 5 times a year for these things. So the issues that the police department have brought up, looks like they're addressed. It looked like Rachel said they were amenable to it, and they will have 2 week in advance notice and go from there. But I don't know, I'm tempted to make a motion to approve it, but I'd like to, I can't, because it's a public hearing, and at some point we have to shut it off and let the townspeople come up and have their say, and then go from there. So that's my thoughts on it.
Through the chair.
Mr. Nesrela, please.
Mr. Kamalo, is this something, a permit where we could just add conditions to address Madam Chair's concerns, such that prior to any event that these plans, the safety plan, the litter plan, should be submitted 2 weeks in advance? Is that something that we could do?
Yes. I just wanted to confirm, though, in terms of the litter plan, did you provide any?
No, not in the past, but again, it never has been an issue.
Yeah. That may be the difference, that in some of the licenses that the board has reviewed, we always see the litter plan. But again, if that can be...
Yeah, but it's private property. This is where I see it different from a parade permit, in that a parade permit, many times people are asking to use public lands or public roadways. Now, this is, we're talking about, you know, somebody, like any one of us, wanting to throw something in one of our backyards, and then asking the town for permission, and we're saying, well, make sure you don't make a mess in your backyard. I can understand the streets and stuff like that, but, you know, just have to make sure that we take care of it.
So, Madam Chair, point of order, I think we're out of sequence here a little bit with this discussion. We're into deliberation mode, and we haven't received public input yet. This is a public hearing. It's more the public's opportunity than ours right now.
Okay.
So I would suggest that we go to the public, see if anybody's any input.
Well,
Yes or
thank
no,
you.
and vote that, close the hearing, then we get into this
All right,
debate.
before we get into that, thank you, Mr. Herr. I do have another question for the applicant. There are no hours at all. This is going to be entertainment outdoors in a
So,
residential area, so what are
I
your
have
plans
always
for-
run
for
it,
sound?
and the way that we've always run it in the past has been Saturdays from 4 to 7:30-ish, depending on when the sun goes down. And that's usually right around 7:30-ish,
So late afternoon, early evening?
after all the
Kind of thing.
sports and everything else on Saturdays.
Other questions from the board before we go to the public? Are there members of the public here who have comments or questions? Dale, Mrs. Danahy.
Yeah, I have a question. Come to the mic, please.
You gotta wave me.
Mrs. Danny, are you familiar with the property at all?
And I've been to some of the events, and they're well-run, they're a lot of fun. But I have a question, once you approve this, would this allow Marty's to have an event every single Saturday for the whole summer, and you not be able to stop it if there's no set?
I can tell you right
Number?
now, I don't have it in me.
No, but you'd be able to. Or you could run it till 10 o'clock at night. And I just fear that by not having some restrictions, that you couldn't stop it because they could do whatever they want. And not that they're going to, but your carte blanche allowing and setting a precedent, maybe they're not gonna, but the next person that applies for it might want to do whatever they want. So I just kind of have some reservations about that.
Point well taken. Other comments, other questions? Chief Slamon.
Limping.
He's limping.
Sit on my butt too much today doing office work.
Titan didn't bite you, did he?
I appreciate the opportunity to be able to comment. For us in public safety, kind of part of dealing with the board is we've talked about preparedness and just public education and safety. So for me, it's like an opportunity to facilitate some of these pieces. I look forward to helping Marty's kind of go through the exercise, which we've done in almost every license, especially in the last couple of years. I've kind of gone heavy on introducing event planning, event safety planning. There's a lot of areas where I can help somebody like the applicant just think of areas that they may not have thought before taking on the responsibility of running an event and running an event safely. So I just try to help and facilitate some of the things just to have an applicant put down the scope of the event on paper. It gives us all a chance to see it real. And there might be some unique things like severe weather plan or how the area might get evacuated, that if we can just talk with the people that are running the events, they're really capable of doing it, but we can help them think about it. That's my goal in this. I've been working with Lieutenant Porter, with many customers in the last 2 years, and I think I think you've seen in my comments, we've had some dramatic improvement on just awareness of responsibility. I'm sure we can do that with Marty's, and again, to me, it's an opportunity, so I want to not have it be defensively postured, but our chance to kind of have better events and continue to have better events. So
Can I just ask, Chief, do you think some of those things could lend themselves to sort of a generic type of a plan that you put down once and it kind of works, as opposed to going back every single time?
I work with Lieutenant Porter. I've talked to the town manager in the last few months. We've created a generic list that I sent out for a couple of the applicants, and it's worked well. I literally commented to him today if we could move something along, working with Marty's that just hits some of the issues you don't have to deal with, depending on how the property is. But it helps us, you know, an example would be one of the events we had, food trucks just showed up, but there's a lot of regulation to food trucks now, and not everybody has that awareness. So, you know, that was one of the comments I added, and we can just help them realize, it helps trigger maybe the Board of Health to know that the event's coming, so they can make sure the food prep is okay or not. And those are just quick examples. I'm not exactly sure how Marty's comes out, but it's nice. The 2 weeks before gives us that chance to talk with the applicant. They may want to come earlier if the event has more pieces to it. If it's simpler, not so much. So it's just our chance to have some dialogue and hopefully help them have a better event for everybody.
But there is something kind of generic that could kind of...
Yeah, in the last couple of years, safety plans on the internet are very standard, and it's, the last couple of years, our government's looking for more preparedness, and this is a part of it.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Hurt?
would the applicant have a problem if we continue this for a couple of weeks to get some of this stuff done? Would that screw up timing in any way for you?
No.
That's where I'm going with this. I know we don't do any deliberation. I want to give an approval, but I also want to have a lot of these pieces codified going forward, so we're not going through this every single time. That's kind of where I'm coming from. Other board members?
No, we're still, we're going to get into deliberation, we have a closed public hearing.
Right.
So I
Public?
don't want to deliberate.
No, I don't want to deliberate either. They're my good questions. Mr. Kamala, procedurally, if we were to close the public hearing, then if we were to ask the applicant to get in place a few of these pieces and come back to us, could more information be presented then? Because the public hearing would be closed, so the thing to do if we go that route would be to continue the public hearing.
Correct.
Right.
I disagree. I think we can close the public hearing, still have dialogue with the applicant, and if the applicant were to come back.
We can still dialogue with the applicant then.
Yeah, but
just
we don't
can't
need to
bring
have
public.
additional public input. I mean, why would we have to keep that open?
Again, if the board believes that there is substantial information that needs to be reviewed, that information needs to be part of the record.
Well, it would be part of the record of an open public meeting. So here's my
This is-
concern, Madam
yeah, but this is a
Chair.
public hearing.
We keep the
Yeah.
public hearing open,
Yeah.
right? And somebody goes out and rallies the troops in town, and in the next meeting, we have 30 people come in and give us all the reasons why they don't like it in particular. Then that's not fair to the applicant who came before a public hearing tonight. So I'm gonna vote to continue if we can just close the public hearing portion and have more dialogue about plans and litter plans and things like that at the next meeting. But if we're not gonna be able to do that, then I'm gonna vote tonight to move forward.
Well, I mean, now we are deliberating, but the public has an opportunity to, in the spirit of an open meeting, hear what's going on, and sometimes as more information is presented, it also raises
We
more
don't continue
questions,
town
which
meetings,
are,
Madam Chair. I disagree.
which deserve to be heard. I don't understand shutting off public input. It might be legitimate public, I think we all want to work with Marty's, we want to make this go forward. I'm not looking to sandbag this proposal in any way. I just want to have everything in order for a very broad thing, and I can't countenance trying to craft it in such a way that the public is shut out if there's a reason for
The public
it.
was given due notice of this hearing tonight.
It's been due notice. I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Sorry?
I'm going to make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second, but I have a comment.
All right, then what's your comment?
Is there anyone else from the public who would like to speak to the issue tonight? All set.
Well, I am totally opposed to setting up a mechanism that if this goes forward, shuts out public input in the future. I mean, you're making an assumption that the public input's all gonna be bad. So I just don't think that's in the spirit of transparency or open meetings as our government is supposed to hold them.
So, okay, so we're deliberating,
Well, you've
we're
made a
deliberating on the
motion.
motion, correct?
You made a motion and it's been seconded, so now we can talk about it. I'm
Right,
talking
so
about
I
it.
disagree with you completely
I
on
know
that
you do.
point. I think that in this particular case, where we're trying to make a decision, okay, and we need to make a decision, and the decision tonight may be to have some contingencies as part of the decision, which we can do. But if we're trying to make a decision and the public's given due notice that we're gonna try and make a decision, or at least hold the public hearing, and then no one else has any comments, I don't think the public is being disenfranchised at all. And I'm a big believer in making decisions because we're already running over on this agenda item quite a bit. This should be a fairly simple process, but because a couple of us have some really specific issues in their mind about litter and things like that, we're dragging this on. Any good business that operates in the center of Hopkinton is not going to allow a bunch of litter to pile up in their front yard because the next day they're open for business again when the party's over and people aren't going to come in if they're stepping on beer cans. I mean, it's nonsensical that we have to worry about a litter plan for a private business.
We're not deliberating the
We're not
the motion.
deliberating the litter right
Well,
now.
I'm
We're
deliberating the concept that we're going to get additional information at a future meeting. I'm a big believer in making decisions in a timely manner, and by extending this particular one, I think we're opening ourselves up to additional, just sort of naysayer comment that should have come out tonight.
Well, I understand your desire to make decisions. That's a good thing. But certainly, I remember on the planning board, if the board needed more information from the applicant had to come back at a later date and provide that added information that the board needed, and the public might have input based on that new information that the applicant presented. And so the public hearing stayed open. And it wasn't wanting to drag things out, it was in the spirit of transparency.
But if I may, to the chair, the planning board isn't doing licensing.
No,
This is
but the idea of
licensing.
keeping a public hearing open until all the information that needs to be included has been included.
They're apples and oranges.
I don't agree.
Okay. Well, there's a motion and a second, Madam Chair.
Does anyone know? I understand there is a motion and a second. Mr. Casino, you don't have to tell me that.
Okay.
Are there other comments or questions from the board relative to the motion at hand? Okay, there has been a motion made and seconded to close the public hearing. All those in favor of closing the public hearing, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed, no. Okay. Public hearing has been closed, so the board can deliberate. I would like to address the comment made about litter. We asked for a litter control plan, even on interior events. There was one for the Shamrock Shindig that's going to be held inside the HCAA. There are ones that are presented for St. John's Church. They're in private property and they're indoors. The issue here, it is private property, but it's outside. You get a wind blowing, and next thing you know, the paper cups are no longer on that site. They're on the neighbor's site. That's why litter control, particularly in an outdoor environment, is important. The issue that brought the litter control to the fore in the beginning was a big litter problem on the common, which, you know, it's public, but it was outdoors. And, you know, it affected everybody. So you got a windy day and the litter's not gonna stay here. So it's, you know, that's where I'm coming from in the litter.
But if I may, even that one was taken care of. The following year, that same event, there was not a speck of litter.
My point is that litter outdoors can spread if it's a windy day, and for an outdoor event, litter has to be accounted for. So it's not an unreasonable request.
I wouldn't have a problem supporting the request for the license tonight with a couple of contingencies. One being the satisfactory litter plan be submitted and approved by the town manager's office in advance of issuing the license. Two, I would like to limit the number of events that can be held to a reasonable number on an annual basis. And three, I'd like to get some hours in there that are specific as to when the events would shut down. I don't think the applicant, and we can still have dialogue with the applicant even though we've closed the public hearing, I don't think the applicant would likely push back on any of those as long as they're reasonable numbers.
I agree with that, and also the fire chief talked about the safety plan that there were some things that might be fairly generic that could be included so that we have this on record.
you want to put
This is
forward-
where I'm going, where perhaps to push it just to the next meeting, especially now with the public hearing's been closed, so the public can't give any more input and rally the troops or whatever, rather than trying to hammer this out right here, Rachel can come back in hopefully maybe 2 weeks and have this all there in front of us. Everybody's happy. We're all comfortable that all these contingencies have been addressed, and it'd be nice and clean instead of trying to craft it here. That's my suggestion, but that's just me.
Well, if I may, to the chair, I look at this list that we get for all liquor licenses and other entertainment licenses and parade permits, and each one of them, each comment from the different departments has been answered. Even the ones from public safety, where was they want to be notified at least 2 weeks in advance with all the appropriate information, and even included in here was information from the chief of the fire chief as how to run this. So I just see that we may be putting undue pressure on the applicant at this point, asking them to come back when they're agreeing to do everything we're asking. When somebody's, as you just said, I'll take, 2 weeks is fine, I'll do the drawings, I'll make sure the litter's controlled.
Yeah.
And if the applicant is going to take everything that comes from the town manager's office, from the various departments, I don't see why we can't make a ruling on this today. If there was some pushback, saying I don't think that'll work, to Mr. Hurst's point and to Dale's point, to limit the number of events, we did that with the cultural arts and some other things, I'm sure that we can work out something that's going to satisfy everyone.
Well,
And this is for the next year. I mean, it's a one-year license.
it's a one-year license. They probably won't be doing anything until the end of March. Right now, it is going on 10 after 8, and we're way overdue, and it's sounding like a lot of these things can easily be hammered out, and it can be a very quick, simple approval in, I would hope, 2 weeks, because right now, if we go down that road, we're going to have to start hammering each one of these things out, and we're going to be here for another half an hour. So I would very much I would like to approve this, and I would like to approve this in 2 weeks when everything is lined up. Because we're over already on our schedule quite a bit. And I'm not going to be comfortable.
Then I'll make
Madam
it,
Chair, in deference to the chair, I move that the Board of Selectmen continue this agenda item for 2 weeks until we can get some of these details sorted out. I personally think 4 events a year, shutting down by 8 PM, having a litter plan, having a safety plan reviewed with the fire chief would be the 4 things I'd be interested in. I'm not looking for open a can of worms and have all kinds of other stuff come here in 2 weeks. And if it does, I'll probably just make the motion with the 4 things I just said that I probably would do tonight anyway, and we'll be done with it. But
I agree with you.
I'm okay with extending it for 2 weeks.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Nasrallah?
just want to get a couple words in here.
Please.
One, I fully support holding off for 2 weeks so we can hammer this out. I don't see an issue there. I do support this application. I'll tell you the one thing that I do have, that I am somewhat struggling over is that this is private property, and how much overreach are we going to have reaching into someone's private property? It's somewhat different when it's on town property. In this case, you'd mentioned the church where they were serving alcohol. I think if Marty's were to be serving alcohol, they will be coming back for a separate license. So, given all those, those are just my thoughts on it. I do support this application, but I fully support your idea of holding off for 2 weeks so that we can hammer out all these details.
Would someone like to make a motion? Mr. Hunt?
I think I made a motion to continue this for 2 weeks.
Was that a motion?
Did I? I'm sorry?
The board does not need a formal motion.
Yeah. I think we're good.
Okay.
Yeah, in fact, the next meeting is February 12th, 1,
Can we
2.
do that?
But in the interim, we have those 4 things I was thinking about, at least I think most of us were
I
thinking
think
about.
those are the main, points.
Memorialized, right?
Yes.
And to Mr. Nesrola's point about private property, it is private property, but all those items that we just ticked off, those all affect the public. If the litter blows into the public, if the noise is offensive to the public, if there are safety issues, if there are parking issues, it involves the public. So, yeah. Okay, so we can just hopefully wrap this up in 2 weeks. You've heard the kind of things we'd like to have kind of in black and white with some latitude. I understand every single event may be a little bit different, but I think some of that stuff's is generic, and we like to, it's a broad permit, so, okay.
And if I just may have one more word, I disagree. I think that we've done much more complicated licensing and done it without this much discussion and fanfare. And I still think that we could put together a few conditions tonight and get this done.
So Rachel, having sat here for many years, I'm a big believer in counting the votes, right? So I can count the votes sitting here right now. You have nothing to worry about, but we just got to go through this process.
Absolutely.
And then we'll come back and we'll get you the votes.
I appreciate that.
I say that as one member.
I appreciate
Thank you.
that.
Dot the i's, cross the t's, we'll be good to go. Thank
You
you
guys
very
have a good
much.
night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, with apologies, our 7:45 item is the FY20 Comprehensive Budget and Capital Budget Hearing. The Board of Selectmen will review the budget and capital requests of the schools, the senior center, the library, youth and family services, and parks and recreation. Okay, so, guess we should take them one at a time. The school committee is here. Kathy and Nancy, you want to step up? And I know Mr. Herr and I have had the privilege of attending a lot of the school committee meetings and budget hearings, but the rest of the town hasn't heard it all. And Susan, so we look forward to you making your presentation as to what you've come up with your budget this year.
Should we assume that our presentation has been put on here? Thank you.
Which one do you prefer to use?
Yeah, this will be fine. It's all set up. I'm not sure where it is though, no. Oh, is this us? Must be right.
Mr. Kamala, while they're getting set up, I was a little confused when I looked through our packet, like the police and the fire and all are coming up later, but the capital items are there. So we're going to be doing the capital article request as well with each committee. So we'll go through the school department's ones with the schools. So what are we doing with like the fire and the police? Are we going to discuss those tonight as well? They were in our packet.
No.
Yes, so that you have advanced.
Just to see it?
Exactly,
Okay,
yeah.
okay, but the only ones we'll discuss are the ones that pertain to the individual departments that are coming before us.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Welcome.
All right, shall we begin?
Yes.
All right, I don't know if this is going to be projected. So thank you for... Okay, great, thank you. So thank you for having us here tonight to look at our FY20 budget presentation. As you know, several months ago, we were at 9.9% when we had invited all of our administrators, our athletic director, director of building and grounds, technology director, to sort of come in and offer us a wish list. What would it look like if they could have all of the things that they wanted? And over the last several months, we've worked very hard to sort of whittle away at that. But in this process of creating the budget, our first and foremost goal was really to keep Hopkinton where it is, among the best school districts in Massachusetts. And I think that we have been able to do that with sort of a little bit of massaging here and there. So what did that mean? That certainly meant that we had to maintain our exceptional academic and extracurricular programs. We wanted to be sure that we were offering curriculum and instruction that meets the needs of every one of our learners. And as you know, the kids who come into the Hopkinton Public Schools every day are students who have very disparate needs. And I think that we do a pretty good job of meeting the needs of all of those children. Clearly, we needed to add teachers and support staff to accommodate the increases in our student population this year. We wanted to ensure that our facilities were up to grade and making sure that they would promote growth for all of our students. We always put student safety first and foremost, so that was a concern in building the budget. Naturally, we continue to build our technology programs, and some of the safety measures involve technology as well. And everything that we do supports our district improvement plan and our school improvement plans. So what were our challenges along the way? Increased enrollment, clearly a challenge, and I will have some data for you further in this presentation so you can sort of see what that looks like. One of the things that also happened along the way is that we had an unanticipated cost of $200,000 come to us. The Hopkinton Public Schools are a part of the ACCEPT Collaborative, and we use ACCEPT for transportation, particularly for some of our special education students. And so a number of the districts who are part of the ACCEPT Collaborative do use it for transportation, and one of the bigger districts, one that we would call a market mover, decided not to be part of the transportation for next year. Due to a number of factors, economies of scale among them, we had to absorb a $200,000 cost that we did not anticipate, and that really resulted in, almost 0.5% of our budget being added in. We opened a new building this year, always challenging. We were creating new programs. With increased enrollment comes increased transportation needs, and of course, there are always unfunded mandates. So how did we get from 9.9 to 6.67? And we think that this is an important slide because we want you to know that it wasn't easy getting ourselves there. We had to eliminate one of the requested FTEs at the high school. We had a request for a math coordinator from K to 5. And you'll see further on that we do have some math needs that we think a math coordinator or a coach would be helpful to sort of strengthen our teaching repertoires and, if possible, work with children one-to-one. So we had to eliminate 0.5 of that. So we are looking at just having half of that position at least funded for this year. We eliminated a requested 1.0 special educator. When the requests originally came in, there was the Director of Building and Grounds was looking for 2 new maintenance workers. We've only been able to fund 1. We eliminated 2 technology requests. We eliminated a 0.2 benefits coordinator position. So right now in central office, we have someone who does benefits at 0.7. We were hoping to make that position whole. As it is, we're just taking that position to 0.8 for next year. That will get us 4 additional hours of her work a week. We had to reduce some support staff requests, and those were pretty significant. We went from 2.8 to 0.6. Some of the things that have actually been helpful to us is that we've had attrition through retirements or resignations. And one of the things that's sort of nice about that is, we are able to maintain jobs of people who are already working in the public schools. And lots of times when people who have been working in the Hopkinton Public Schools for a very long time retire, they're at the top of the salary schedule. And at times when we replace them, we don't replace them at the very highest point in the salary schedule. So that will frequently bring us back a little bit of money as well. We've been able to restructure some of our personnel, sort of just move them around into places where we had holes. We've had some small reductions to our expense budgets. In the final hours of this, we had to call upon our principals and give them a dollar amount and say, please just reduce your supply budget by X amount. And then finally, we're using our Title III grant money. Title III is money that comes into the district for English language learners. So overall, we've been able to maintain programming, preserve jobs, and even build a little bit of new programming along the way. So let's now take a little bit of a look at our enrollment data. You know, because we've been talking about it for a very long time, that we began the school year this year with 3,721 students. By October 4th, we were up to 3,740, and as of December 20th, we were at 3,756. So we are growing incrementally, sort of month by month. We have, I don't know, 8 to 10 new students arriving on our doorstep. When we built this budget, we built it on NASDAQ predictions, and what NASDAQ is telling us is that we should probably have somewhere around 3,859 students in our schools next year. So we are anticipating 103 new students. I can tell you that we have already absorbed some of those kids, because when you look at the December 20th date for 3,756 students, we've had children arrive here since December. So that number of 103 is already being whittled down. The other thing that's true about that is what we need to have happen to be able to absorb all 103 of those students is that they are spread out sort of equally across 13 grade levels. So if we had 8 students in pre-K, 8 students in K, 8 students in 1, 8 students in 2, we know we have the classroom space and the teacher sort of manpower to be able to absorb those kids. If we have another year where we have an inordinate number of students arrive at any particular grade level, this budget will not work. It just won't sustain. So for example, this year we thought we were getting 204 kindergarten kids. We got 264 kindergarten kids. That would make a budget such as this one untenable. The same thing was true for grade 6, grade 8, and grade 9. We probably had about roughly, a class size enter grade 6 and a class size enter grades 8 and 9 combined. So we really need for this thing to, those 103 kids to sort of be distributed fairly equally. I'm not sure that that will happen. So how do we assess the impact of enrollment growth? I think that's really important for people to understand. When we entered into FY19, we assumed we were going to have 50 new students on our doorstep on September 1st. What happened was we had 189 new students on our doorstep on September 1st. So we had 139 kids more than we expected coming into the schools this year. Every 20 students who enter means that we need to hire about 1.4 teachers. And that happens because a student doesn't just have a second grade teacher, but sometimes needs remedial reading, or they go to PE, or they go to art, or they go to music, or they need special education services, or OT, or PT, or speech, so it ends up rounding out to about 1.4 teachers for every 20 students. This year then, with sort of 7 groups of 20 coming into our district, what that meant was we probably needed to hire 9.8 FTEs sort of right off the bat. By the time you get to that last slide, you'll see that we were just about in that place. We were probably just around 8 FTEs. So as we are looking at the 103, we can absorb them. What you can absolutely be sure of is if we have those kinds of astronomical numbers again, we are probably going to be looking for FTEs. And my guess is that you heard that, in algebra classes at the high school, for example, teachers were teaching classrooms with 30, 31, and 32 kids in them this year. Right? And that just can't possibly happen. We try to do a student-generated schedule at the high school. So what that means is kids will go into course selection, and they choose classes, and they are qualified for classes, and they're placed in classes. But when new kids enter into the district and they qualify for Algebra 2 or Algebra 1, that's where we put them, because that's where they need to be. I've also included a slide that shows our new home projections for FY19 and 20, and perhaps you've seen this slide in the past as well. The estimated occupancy for June of 2019, you can see that there are about 132 new homes slated to be finished by this June. If every one of those homes on average had 1 child living in them, we would be at 132 new students. And you know that we've already said we've probably absorbed about 40 of those kids, I think, already. If they were 2, we'd be at 264. And, we might be thinking right now that we're in a good place because just based on numbers, but at times kids will stay in their currently enrolled school until we get to, the end of the school year, and that's when families will kind of make those moves. And finally, I've included our per pupil expenditures for 2017. And this gives you, I think, a good sort of snapshot of where Hopkinton falls in those rankings. I will be perfectly honest, I just chose these districts randomly to sort of show you kind of where we are. But they are also districts with whom I think we like to compare ourselves from time to time. So you can see we are the green number. It's our per pupil expenditures, $14,557. And that's lower, obviously, too, than the state per pupil expenditure. I like this slide because I think it shows, it's a nice illustration that in Hopkinton, taxpayers are getting a lot of educational bang for their buck. If you look at this performance highlight, Joe, you can see that quite fine. Any of those cells that have been tinted green, those are places where Hopkinton is in the 95th percentile or better on MCAS, ELA, and math percentile rankings. Grade 3 always has an outstanding showing. So you can see that in grades 3 and 5 in ELA, we're in the top 5%, and for math, grades 6, 7, and 8, we are in the top 5% for ELA. The white cells will show you places where we are ranked in the top 10%, so we're in the 90th to the 94th percentile, and that would be grade 4 for ELA, grade 6 for ELA, and grade 8 for ELA, grade 3 in math, and grade 5 in math. And then finally, the peach ones are places where we are in the top 20%. Grade 7, the ELA ranking was in the 83rd percentile, and grade 4, the math ranking was in the 89th percentile. I guess just more evidence that the Hopkinton Public Schools are doing a pretty great job. Hopkinton High School is ranked 18th statewide in average reading and math SAT scores. We have 89% of our students earn a passing score of a 3, 4, or 5 on over 1,100 AP tests taken. We had 100% of our students earn proficient or advanced on the ELA MCAS test in 2018, which means not one student was not meeting expectations, not one student failed that test. We had 97% of our students earn proficient or advanced on the math MCAS in 2018. We are one of 4 high schools only in Massachusetts who are named by the Commissioner of Education as a school of recognition. And Hopkinton High School, again, was rated by Boston Magazine in the top 20% among the best public high school districts in Massachusetts for 2017. So we have an awful lot to celebrate. We're doing an awful lot with I think a pretty good per pupil expenditure, and when we were asked to come in with a budget of 6.5%, we have managed to come in with a budget of 6.7%. And I would be remiss if I did not thank all of the administrators in this district and all of the people who serve as directors, central office personnel, because they worked enormously hard to get us to this place and to think about how to sort of best deploy our assets and our personnel and our materials and our resources to create, I think, a budget that will serve children very well in FY20.
Okay, so moving forward, as Dr. Kavanaugh said, our guidance was to come in at 6.5, and not without struggles, but we did manage to come in at 6.7.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I have to remember I'm the fifth person.
Yeah, so you're driving.
There we go.
Okay. This slide just pretty much shows that being a service industry, our big driver really is salaries. So you can see that 80% of the budget is driven by salaries, 20% by expenses. When you look at the increase just in payroll alone, that increase for salary is around 5%. Probably around 3.5% of that are contractual obligations, and the other 1.5% are enrollment-driven hires, which you'll see in a minute. So as we said, what happened this year in the number of students beyond what was budgeted for FY19, there were a number of positions that we had to hire this year just to address the students that were at our doorstep come September. 4.6 for secondary teachers, 2.0 for English learner teachers, high school campus aide, special education paraprofessionals. We did, again, through attrition, reduce a 0.5 learning specialist as we kept looking at these paraprofessional needs for the students that were before us. Teacher of the visually impaired, again, based on the needs of the students. And we restructured our library in increasing our library at the Marathon Elmwood level, but also decreasing the library assistant. So trying to accommodate those increases with what we had. The new personnel increases that have been requested for FY20 to address class size, 1.6 in elementary, 1.0 for secondary teachers, an elementary adjustment counselor, special education paraprofessionals, math and ELA coordinators, as Dr. Kavanaugh had talked a little bit about some of the reductions that were made from that 9.9. Some of these numbers, again, have been reduced from the original request, and the 1.5 of that is one of the obvious illustrations. Secondary nurse, elementary library for the Hopkins level, administrative assistants, maintenance, and a benefits coordinator. And you can see what the budget impact for FY20 is for that one. And again, further decreases in personnel that we looked to do to try to accomplish what was closest to the student. And so these were some decreases that we put in place, not without struggle. A reduction of a literacy coach, an assistant principal at the middle school librarian, a guidance secretary reduction from a 12-month position to a 10-month position, reduction of an English learner teacher, and again, relying on grants, that Title III grant that Dr. Kavanaugh spoke of, reduction of a special ed learning specialist and a special ed coach. So this is just another way to look at what we ended up having to do personnel-wise. The personnel that were hired in FY19 that are being carried forward to FY20, and then the decreases that were done on both sides. And then lastly, the expenses. So you can see that there are a few that were just really the bigger drivers. Central office, that really is carrying the bus contract. So that is the increase in our contractual obligations and the addition of one bus. One of the other requests that was in that 9.9 actually was 2 buses. So we pared it down to just an increase of 1 bus, and we're going to keep our fingers crossed on that one. Building and grounds and utilities, this is really a reflection of not really still having a full comfort level on our utilities at the Marathon. Have not gone through a full year of true experience at the Marathon in terms of utilities. So we increased that utility budget to reflect kind of the square footage of our existing buildings, and we're keeping an eye on that. We also had the benefit this year of an Eversource rebate, so that budget from the utilities in FY19 was transferred out to accommodate some of these additional positions that were hired in, but that utility cost does not go away. And then special education, as we spoke of earlier, we needed to absorb that increase in transportation, which was unexpected. In addition, we had the prepaid transportation number that also was transferred up to cover our salaries. So that transportation increase in special education is quite large. There's about 183,000 increase in tuitions in that number as well. Excuse me. So those are really our big drivers when you look at expenses, special education, which of course is unavoidable, and then contracts and utilities, again, which are also unavoidable.
And that's what we've got.
So the other piece that I'm not sure is part of what's on there, what we had provided for you as well was just another spreadsheet that gave kind of all the funding sources that we use for the budget. So it gave you the details of what the increase in the general fund, which is the 6.67. But then in addition, let me bring my view up a little bit higher here. In addition, we utilize 1.3 million in revolving funds and another 713,000 in grant funds. If you look at the revolving funds, the athletic revolving is your athletic fees, so that's a direct offset to that athletic line within the budget. Bus fee revolving, again, those are the bus fees that are charged to students in grades 7 through 12. Circuit breaker, that you see has been decreased over the years, and all of these revolvings we're trying to adjust so that they truly reflect the receivable, so that it becomes a sustainable funding source for the budget. The estimate that they're putting out now for circuit breaker reimbursement is around 68%, which is much lower than what we would want to hear in terms of being above 70. Parking fee revolving, again, those are fees that are charged to students, juniors and seniors for parking. Building use revolving is for facility use rentals. The international students and the preschool tuition are tuition that are charged to students to attend. As you go further down and you see the two grants, the Metro West grant, one at the high school and one at the middle school, those are no longer available. That was a 3-year grant and is funding for a adjustment counselor, one at each building, that has since been absorbed into the budget. And then the special education IDEA grant is an allocation grant, and then the early childhood grant. Both of those are used to offset salaries in the special education budget. So you can see the grants went down percentage-wise for this year, really based on those Metro West grants going away. So if you look at the total of all funds, the increase in the budget is 6.3%.
It's also worth noting that we will not very likely get Title I funding next year either.
So the grants that you see here are the grants that supplant the general fund. There are other grants that supplement the budget, such as Title I, Title II, and those come and go, which is why we consider them to be supplemental to the budget, because in any one funding year, they could go away. So we did not have Title I last year. We do have it this year, and it already looks like we won't have it for FY20. And that's based on poverty, our percentage, and our percentage is dropping for FY20, the estimate. So that's why those grants are not reflected here, because they don't supplant the general fund for the budget. If we don't have that, we don't run that program.
So, if I may, through the chair.
Mr. Kamala, please.
First off, thank you for a brilliant presentation. Just quick question. So, in other words, the actual cost of running the school department is 50,171,529.
That's correct.
Okay.
So, if I may, I'm just blown away by this circuit breaker. I know it's to offset the special ed, and I had no idea how little it is. So am I reading this correctly, that the special ed system-wide for 2020, the budget is $5,400,000? 2,419, and we only get 300,000 in circuit, that's it? Am I reading that wrong?
So circuit breaker is for students that cost the district 4 times foundation, and then over and above that 4 times foundation, you're reimbursed that percentage that the state decides upon.
And by foundation, you mean our basic per pupil cost that applies to all the other students? Like,
Correct.
it's 14.5 here.
So for instance, foundation, over and above foundation for this year is about $48,000. So students that cost the district over and above, and that does not include transportation.
Okay. It's a big gap.
So you could have a student that is placed, as a, for instance, at a collaborative. Now, a collaborative typically is a lower cost placement than, say, a private. So if foundation is 48 and the collaborative is 59 typically, and you get 68% of that, so on a $59,000 placement, you know, your gap has come way down in terms of what you're being reimbursed.
Okay, thank you. There questions on the part of the board? Mr. Hers nodding his head.
So on a lighter note, just seeing Jen Parsons, I'm still stuck at center school, I'm sorry. I keep thinking, like, why is the center school principal here? Couple questions, and to start with Mr. Kamalo, if I could, please. So Mr. Kamalo, on the free cash for FY '20 that we're carrying, what is that number, roughly?
Is it 3.2 million?
Okay, so $3 million.
Yeah.
How much of that is from the schools into free cash? Roughly.
Easy answer, 0.
Zero.
Okay, so let's talk about that for a minute. Why is it 0? And I'm not saying that in an accusatory manner, I'm just trying to understand how the free cash piece works for all of us.
I think over the last 3 years, one of the biggest budget drivers in terms of the school budget has been the unexpected, unbudgeted expenses that show up during the year.
Of the new students?
Yeah, of new students and other related expenses.
Okay.
And perhaps in my view, that is why the appropriated budget is exhausted come the end of the financial year. Coupled with that, I think, has been the whole idea of prepaying some of the forthcoming year's expenses. Again, done as a way of trying to mitigate the size of the budget in the coming year. So again, for me, it comes down to the fact that the amount of unbudgeted, unexpected expenses is substantially higher than what we've ever seen in past years. Again, that's my assessment.
Does that kind of line up, you think?
Well, it does. So at some point, way in the past, you were able to start doing this prepaid. And that became a reserve, if you will. So in the year that I've been here, we've spent that reserve fully, just based on unanticipated budget. And for this year, it has been personnel. When we developed the FY19 budget, that was the effort to really pull back on the amount of money that we were spending on circuit breaker, because we were exhausting that account. So it went from a $600,000 appropriation to $300,000, which lined it up with the receivable. So FY19 had that huge drop, and then, I mean, FY18 to 19, and then in this year, we've spent all of that money on personnel.
Okay, that makes sense, it's logical. Then the other thing I saw, the special education budget is going up $760,000 or so, yet I think there was a slide that showed there were 2 special education positions being eliminated, or was that 2 that had been proposed that we aren't gonna fill, or is it 2 from this year going into next year?
So the 700,000 increase that you saw was really just in expenses, not in salary. So if you were to break out the increases in salary for special education, it's about 5.6%. So the 762 was just in expenses, which was the transportation, tuitions. It was not personnel related.
And then that 5.6 for special education is gonna be enough? I don't wanna tell you how to run your business, but, I mean, with all the special education needs we have, and I believe it's our fundamental duty to help all and educate all, is that enough? I mean, that's...
There were cuts. There were cuts that were made. There was a diligent look at student to staff ratio. Some of the instructional assistants, paraprofessionals, some are driven by IEPs, they're non-negotiable. Some are trying to step down from an intensive to a moderate classroom before you can get to a fully inclusive classroom. So there were a number of looks throughout, but there were also cuts.
And it's never easy, but in the public sector, we get to do this in public. You know, in a business, we close the door and hammer it out and say, well, that's the budget, go live with it, and they have to walk out with a smile. So here, we don't have to do that so much. We get to have debates about things like we saw earlier. Are your team members on board here? Is Dr. Zielinski on board? Are the principals on board?
The cuts that we're talking about, there was a 0.5 special educator FTE taken from each of the elementaries, so 0.5 from Marathon, 0.5 from Elmwood, 0.5 from Hopkins. And we looked very carefully at sort of the caseload. So if you are what we could call a learning specialist, you have X number of kids on your caseload. Those never equal out because you may have a behavioral program where you only take 8 children. You might be somebody who has moderate students, you could have 12 children. If you had intensive special needs, you might only have 4 children, depending on the makeup of the kids. But what we've really looked closely at, as Mrs. Rothermick said, we looked at the kids that we have in our buildings right now who we know will be in those classrooms next year. We looked carefully at teacher-student ratio data that actually comes to us from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. And we have put the elementary principals and Dr. Zaleski in a room with Mrs. Parson and with me. And we're still really looking carefully at how that's going to be structured for next year. But one of those 0.5 educators has already left us through a resignation at Marathon, and it seems to be working right now. So that's our hope, that it's going to be okay the way it is. And we really have spent an awful lot of time looking at it.
Okay. Thank you.
So, when I looked at the expense changes, the thing that jumped out at me was the special education. And, you know, it would be foolish for me to ask you if you've explored every option you can for grants and whatever. I'm sure that you have. Brian asked kind of the question I was going to ask on that, as far as, you know, with the special education increase, you know, how are we dropping positions? But I understand it. I've had many conversations with both the Kavanaughs in front of us over the last year or so, and I'm very confident that we can kind of come to a common ground and get this budget hammered out. I have a lot of confidence and admiration for the work that you guys have all done. That said, it's not going to be an easy process moving forward, but you know, it's as I spend more years on the board here and see how things work, generally become a little bit more vocal. So I'm looking forward to becoming a little bit more vocal with you guys in the next few months.
If I may, to the chair. Yeah, I'm really grateful that you had the slides where how we got here, because I believe last year many people got confused with the how we got here with how many, they looked at that as, these are all the cuts, as opposed to these are just less increases from year to year. And so I'm glad that afterwards you went through and with all of the changes that you were going to do with all the FTEs. But to follow up on Mr. Hers, here, when we talked to Mr. Kamalo about free cash, and we have to have our numbers certified, and then it comes back to us, and we know how much money we have left over from one budget to go into the next. Is there a number that's published at any point that says what, before you do the pay downs or pay forwards, is there a number so that we know, from one budget to the next, so that there isn't a carryover? Because if Mr. Kamalo was able to just spend that 3.2 million, we wouldn't understand, we wouldn't know how much to really put in for the 20 or 21 or 22. So is there a certification or something of that number before you start paying it forward, or paying ahead, or paying down, or whatever we're using the term?
So right now, what we have changed is we will not be prepaying.
Okay.
Yeah, so they don't have any to prepay with.
Okay.
Challenge.
But to clarify, do you mean that going forward, you will not be doing this prepayment, we'll be seeing that number? We'll start seeing what comes back from the schools that other departments return back as free cash?
Right now, we are running a positive variance of 75,000. Will that hold through the end of the year? I'm unsure.
But you mean that in subsequent years, you won't be using whatever remains to prepay, that'll be shown and turned back as part of free cash?
I don't know that we'll have money to turn back.
But if there is, that'll be the new procedure?
We will not be prepaying.
Okay.
That would be a nice challenge to have,
Transparency.
right? To make sure we find out what that number is, because that number doesn't exist right now at this growth.
Right, right. But going
But
forward.
in the past, it did exist.
It is good
There was
to
some dialogue
know
about that.
exactly what we've got and where it is. So that's a good policy. I'm glad to hear that.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much, because that was always a black hole for me, not understanding. If we're paying it down, then we don't really know what the actual expense was coming up on the next budget. Great, I'm good, thank you very much.
Good, yeah, that's good.
I have very little to add. I think he has done a great job of putting this all together. Being the newbie here and trying to get to understand all these numbers, it's somewhat overwhelming. I don't envy your job. I think it seems to me that the special ed is a big driver here, and to Mr. Herr's point, I think that everyone should be educated, and that's incumbent on us to use to fully fund that. So in looking for savings, I'm not sure where to look, but I know that you guys have done a fantastic job, worked through it, and I guess that's why you're doing it, so, and not me.
I have just one, this is a little question, but I'm just kind of curious. Looking at the tuition on the integrated preschool, I was just a little surprised that between this year and next year's projections, there's actually a $30,000 drop in the anticipated tuition. I would think that with the increased number of kids, there would be every bit as much demand, if not more demand, to get a child into one of those tuition-paying slots. I'm just surprised to see a drop.
So again, what I'm trying to do is line this up with the receivable to make this a sustainable number. So 170 is spending above what we're bringing in.
Okay.
So the drop is not necessarily a reflection in a drop in the number of students. It's an over expenditure in use of that account in previous years.
Okay, so that's why you're projecting 140 for the following year. That's
Correct.
actually a more realistic number based on previous performance.
That's correct.
Okay, understood. Thank you. Mr. Herr?
When was the last time we had a budget working group meeting, Mr. Kamal?
Yesterday.
Sorry?
Yesterday.
Thank you, Mr. Kamal.
little point there.
Yeah.
You're doing a nice job. Jeez. Well,
I think it shows, honestly.
there you go.
So that's good.
If there are not further questions on this piece of the budget, is this the appropriate time to discuss the capital articles that the school has put forth? And I think there are a number of them. So, I know we've had background information in our packets, but it looks here you have a whole bunch of stuff, actually. Would you, Susan maybe, or whoever, like to speak to these different requests that are coming up on capital pay-as-you-go?
So I shared with the school committee a memo which basically showed what they had approved back in the fall, and then some of the adjusted costs as we received, firmer estimates, and then what has been recommended by the town manager. So unfortunately, I don't think I'll be able to project that, but it basically is a reflection of what is in Mr. Kamala's spreadsheet that you have before you, but I may be speaking out of order, but it's what is on there. So the original couple of things that were originally approved by the school committee was a building and grounds equipment, an HVAC district-wide, and a flooring article. So 3 separate ones that we collapsed into one facility improvements district-wide for $170,000. And that is similar to what we did this year for FY19, and it gave us that flexibility of being able to address within that broad confines the HVAC that is out there in terms of all the different pieces of equipment, any building and grounds that is out there. And just as to step back in terms of background, we have taken every piece of equipment that we have in the district and we have entered it into our work order system. So we have every piece of equipment with an unique identifier, the date of installation, the expected age, and then aged out our equipment and created this replacement plan. So that's where our requests are born out of, is basically looking at in terms of the replacement years of this equipment and when it should be replaced going full out, including the new marathon equipment as well. So within the building and grounds equipment, you have it's the vacuums, it's the floor scrubbers, it is a line painter for the fields, it is a groomer. The HVAC district-wide includes return fans, hot water pumps, and again, it's throughout the district, so it's in multiple buildings. And flooring, of course, throughout all the buildings. So that is all encompassed into that facility improvements district-wide.
Okay, before you go on, Mr. Guttino has a question.
I have a question, maybe it's to Mr. Carl, and to, what is the definition of a capital expense? Some of these sound more maintenance, and because because I don't want to start a pattern with departments where if stuff's not maintained, it's like, don't worry, we'll just put in a capital expense, we'll just replace it. And because some of these sound replacement, and the other ones, like when we're talking about the line striping, and the floor machines, the floor machines maintenance, but the line striper for fields that the schools control, but the town has to ask permission of the schools to use. That sounds like it's going over might be going over
Let me handle a couple of those if I could, please.
Sure.
The schools do not control the fields unilaterally. The schools and the town's Parks and Recreation Department put together a governing body that controls the fields. The schools are not in charge of those fields.
Oh, okay.
So that's sort of my testing response to your comment about the fields. Specific to
well, it didn't have to
the
be.
capital items that are pay-as-you-go, in effect, it's in this year's budget. It's not like we're going outside getting more money, because they're in the pay-as-you-go line items of the budget. Do you know what I'm saying? So I agree with you. We can't be doing regular maintenance outside the budget process and go and get an article and raise taxes for that.
But these are things, this is stuff we're gonna buy inside the budget that's been submitted at 6.67%, but the pay-as-you-go line covers that.
This is inside the 6.7, I thought this was outside the 6.7%.
It's part of the pay-as-you-go capital.
That's part of the whole budget plan that we have in place.
Okay, no, that's why then I'll take it back. I thought this was outside of the 6.7.
Yes, but some capital items are outside.
I understand.
So that's where there's some confusion sometimes.
Mr. Kamal?
Just to be clear, these capital items are not part of the operating budget. I think that's the point you're making.
Right.
Okay, so Mr. Hurt, you were wrong.
But the pay-as-you-go is part of the budget that we're gonna submit.
But it's that, but again, so that means
Did you
that,
say I was wrong?
yes, according to Mr. Kamalo. Because if we're at
Am I wrong, Mr.
50,170,000 or whatever it is, that means it's 50,182,000 that we're actually putting into it. Whether it comes out of the right pocket or the left pocket, it's not in that one pocket.
The pay-as-you-go budget includes all the departments. So I understand what you're saying. It's outside their operating budget, but it's in the overall pay-as-you-go budget line that we use for all departments. So in my head, it's in the budget we have in front of us.
Well, it's all within the $100 million budget or whatever it's going to be.
No, because if there's capital articles outside of the pay-as-you-go,
Right.
those are not in the budget in front of all of us.
But it's not within the school budget.
Not in the 6.67.
It's not within the 6.67. It's outside the 6.67.
I want Mr. Kamal to tell me if I'm wrong or not.
All right.
It's always
Here's the good thing. I think you're correct that the projects identified are part of the pay-as-you-go portion of the budget. You're also correct that the items that usually would be considered maintenance would normally fall under the operating budget, but that's not the case here. For a couple of reasons. This is purely my perspective, that as the expenses have continued to grow in response to the growth in the community, some of the regular maintenance issues have been pushed out of the operating budget. On the town side, this year we began the process of moving them back to the operating budget. And I'm sure there are some of your maintenance issues that have transitioned back to the operating budget. However, because of the scale of the need, some of them still remain outside the operating budget.
The scale of the need and behind. So what happens in all communities as the budgets continue to be strained financially, it's your capital replacement that gets pulled out in deference to salaries. So this is what has happened over the years, which has put us behind in terms of our replacement plan. So when I tell you about this schedule, some of the items that we're replacing and just trying to get on should have been replaced 10 years ago. So we're trying to get ourselves caught up. This still doesn't get us caught up, but it's starting to make an effort to really get there. And then with respect to what Mr. Kamala said, the hope would be that next year, more of this can be absorbed into the operating budget. Getting into the 6.5 for FY20 was difficult, but easier than last year's guidance of 3.5. So it'll all depend on where we are able to go, and again, in terms of the growth and the number of students that hit us September 1. So it becomes tricky.
But I don't think, that, through the chair, I don't think we can reassess all the houses every single year in order to be able to go an extra 3, 4, 5% in all of our budgets. So that it just ended up being one of those years that we ended up reassessing everybody's homes, so the home values all went up, so everybody just paid more taxes. But what I'm saying is, what I think is for more transparency is that if the budget really does require another 150,000 or 200,000 that we just bring it into the operating budget right now and just say, look, we couldn't meet this 6.5, we had to come up to 6.9, but all of these things are back under the school committee's control. And so all the school committee stuff is on their side, of the budget, and the town stuff is on that side, because I think right here, we're conflating some of the flooring machines that are coming out of this pay-as-you-go budget. Well, then in that case, if the town hall needs to borrow one of the flooring machine cleaners, could they use it? But, and usually we don't do that kind of stuff. DPW uses their stuff, schools use their equipment. So, I just think for transparency, just come back and say, these are the things that we need, and that's the budget, and then we deal with it on that level, as opposed to saying, okay,
But, so I'm sorry, but this is what the budget working group is supposed to solve. We shouldn't be solving the details of what's going in pay-as-you-go and what's going in their budget.
Well, this is the first time I've seen it.
I just want to acknowledge, I was wrong, you were right about the 6.7.
Hold up, it is 9:05.
So, but the point is, getting past that quickly, but the point is, the pay-as-you-go and this budget, and the budget working group decide what goes in pay-as-you-go and what goes in the operating budget, or I think it should be doing that kind of thing. I mean, the pay-as-you-go is always sort of the last thing we get to before we get to town meeting, and a lot of times, that's where we start coming in and saying, that's nice, sorry, and it's gone. So, I'm not convinced we're done with pay-as-you-go yet, but you were right.
Oh, thank you. But, and again, if I just could continue, and on some of these, where we're putting a bunch of them together and like the flooring fixes, 40,000, if we could break it down so that when we go to town meeting, people understand, because, again, that goes back into there's $40,000 to fix floors, and, some of these things came back more this year than they were last year, but if there was money left over from one of these, it could go into something else. And so I'm just saying that we hold feet to the fire with all the other departments, that we need it just down to the penny on some of these things. And I don't want to get too loose with this when it comes to people's monies, when we just reassessed everybody's homes.
Well, the pay-as-you-go article is gonna have that whatever machine written right there.
No, it doesn't. If I can, Mr. Herr, if you look at the stuff that came back from Ben, it says district-wide facilities improvements. The line item is made up of 3 capital requests. Partial floor replacement for all schools, $40K. Building and grounds equipment, line striper, $11K. Field irrigation system replacement, $40K. Field rake, $21K. Floor machine, $13K.
The town meeting's gonna see that.
I understand, but it isn't
It's
as
as
specific.
transparent, how transparent can it be? That's as transparent as any other article, right? You're saying that we're gonna pass a pay-as-you-go article for 300 grand for a bunch of maintenance stuff that should be an operating budget and not discuss it. Town meeting's gonna see they're buying a vacuum cleaner and they're buying this and they're buying that.
If I may,
Yes, please, Mr. Kamal.
I think the point is well taken. That, number one, there are items that are in the pay-as-you-go list that normally would be in the operating budget. I think there is an explanation as to why. Number two, there is a conscious effort. There is a conscious effort going forward to make sure that we clearly articulate the structure of the budget, namely what is in the operating budget and what is capital. And what's helpful for us is that the town bylaw does define what is capital, and I think that's the issue that we are raising in part. So I think my message through the chair is that this point is well taken. We will continue to address the issues that are raised. We also, I believe, have an explanation as to why the budget is structured the way it is as of now.
And then I have just one more going, now this goes to one I don't know if you brought up yet, the school bus parking. Can I hit that one?
Can we maybe continue going through this and get to school bus parking when we get to school bus parking?
Oh,
Because
sure.
we've only hit the first one
Oh,
on the
okay.
capital list. So let's
Oh, I didn't
do
realize
that
that.
when we get to
Yes.
that. Please continue.
Okay, thank you. The next item is the boiler replacements for $160,000. Currently, there are 2 boilers at the middle school, 5 boilers at the high school, and 1 boiler at Hopkins. So that is kind of the 10-year look of what needs to be replaced, and this is looking at doing 1 a year for several years. The next one are roof replacements. This is the design and engineering, and this is for the Hopkins roof that is over the gym and cafeteria, and the middle school roof where there are not solar panels, with the look to the following year in 2021 to actually replace those roofs. Those roofs are currently leaking. The Hopkins roof was put out to bid as an alternate when they did the other part of the Hopkins roof, but the capital article did not have enough to do the entire thing. So this is the piece of Hopkins that was not done. System-wide security upgrades. This is a continuation of cameras and wiring for additional security around the campus, both interior and exterior. Technology upgrades. This is the data center that controls townwide the infrastructure for the internet connections. So this is a joint article for both town and the school to upgrade that data center. School capacity study. This is looking at townwide, school-wide, all of our buildings in terms of what can we use within our buildings to use as classroom space as we continue to be constrained in terms of where we can put students. And that would be a look at all of our buildings, and then what else would come out of that if we were to need portable classrooms? What would be those next steps looking at our growth?
Susan, can you state the dollar amounts on each of these as you go through it? It helps.
Yes,
just for
I
people to hear that.
apologize. So the school capacity study was 50,000.
Yep.
The middle school renovation, design and engineering for 25,000. This is really looking at the spaces within the middle school currently as they are in terms of, again, creating that classroom space. As a, for instance, one of the rooms within the middle school is a lecture hall. How can that could be configured and what would be the best use? Could we use that for some of the smaller programs that we're running and pull those programs out of a classroom to open up a classroom? Do we build that out as a classroom? So it's kind of looking at all those spaces again for those immediate needs. The bus parking lot is for $300,000. And this is an increase to the $400,000 that was allocated at town meeting last year for a couple of reasons. Once it went through the full permitting process and the design that was necessary to conform to all of the stormwater regulations, and in response to some of the bids that we got prior to getting the full permitting design, increased the cost of that parking lot to $700,000.
Okay, Mr. Coutinho had a question on that one.
My question is, when a person comes in front of the Concom or the planning board, they usually have an engineering firm working for them that can push back on stuff that Concom might say or the planning board might say. Does the school committee or the school department have any engineering company that worked for you? Now, we have Beta and all these other groups that work for the town, that work for the Concom, and they work for the planning board. But was anybody looking out for the school's interest when people put these orders of conditions that may be totally onerous and totally burdensome on the schools to have to absorb this stuff? Was anybody working for the schools, looking out for their best interest to make sure that some of the stuff that was asked for in Concom or the planning board was too tough?
I asked the same question.
And the answer to that is yes. So, we had our design firm that worked with a wetlands engineer, I guess, if you will, who would go through and do all the stormwater calculations, but then it would be a peer review. And so it really is coming to a meeting of the minds. At the end of the day, we have to answer to what the peer review wants.
Yeah, because I just wanted to make sure that our own engineers weren't working against you to try and support what the other boards were saying, oh, you have to do it. And they say, well, they said it, and we might as well do it. Great, thank you very much. I just really wanted to make sure, because when I saw 300,000 over the 400,000, it's just like, what are these boards asking of the schools to try and get this built? Thank you.
And to your point, I asked the same question in the meeting the other day, because, that 300,000 was made up of a whole bunch of add-ons, 40, 11, I mean, it just piles up, and they don't look like that much individually, and then all of a sudden you're talking real money, you're talking
Right.
300,000. You do have to question, was there any pushback to make sure that, not that we don't want to do what's required, but that sometimes there's a middle ground. Sometimes they go overboard, and I know Mr. Kamalo explained that the town's policy, as well it should be, is that if we make individual applicants before these boards conform, the town should certainly be playing by the same rules. And I understand that, but I also know that in these meetings, sometimes there's some pushback, and there's a middle ground, and you don't have to go, the full enchilada, if you ask a few more questions. So I think that's where you're coming from. We want to make sure that we're getting what's needed, but, not above and beyond if there's a different way to do it that's not quite as onerous.
When you and I were on the planning board together, there were times when one engineer said the stormwater should be done like this, and the proponent's engineer said done a different way, which was less expensive. They got into the room together and said, oh yeah, I guess yours would work. Yeah. And they end up saving $75,000, $100,000. So I just wanted to make sure that
somebody's standing up for us.
Somebody was standing up for us, right? Thank you. That you weren't just being bullied.
There were a lot of conversations that those two engineering firms were on the phone frequently.
Okay.
Great, thank you very much.
I didn't mean
Madam Chair, is there any way we can kind of move this along?
Well, I think we're trying, but in all fairness, the school department budget is probably the biggest driver, and these are important things, so, we'll all do our part not to ask too many questions, but please, go ahead, Susan, I'm sorry to...
Well, the last one that has been recommended for funding is the order of conditions for 100,000. This is an outstanding order of conditions from when the original high school fields were built. And this is to satisfy that and get that completed and closed. Two articles that were not recommended for funding moving forward is kitchen equipment for 50,000 and vehicle replacements, which was reduced to 46,000. Those two articles have not been moved forward at this time.
So the kitchen equipment, item 17, is gone?
That was not recommended to be funded, that's
Okay,
correct.
and what was the other one?
Vehicle replacements.
Where is that?
46,000?
Correct.
How much was it?
Number 18.
46,000, number 18. Oh, special advance. Oh, okay, thank you. So those are looking for it. Okay, that's 50,000 and 46. Okay. Okay. All right. Are there any questions? I guess hopefully not, but speak now.
That was a big one. That was 300,000.
I know, it is. It adds up. We all set?
I think we're good to go.
Mr. Nestor, please.
Yeah, real quick, on the wetlands replication, for the order of conditions, are you being asked to do more than a 2-to-1 replication?
No, it has been reduced to a 1.5 to 1.
Okay, good.
Okay.
That's the pushback.
There you go. Okay, that's good to hear. All right, everybody happy?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much for all your time and your great presentation. And, in fairness to the townspeople, they need to hear this, they need to understand it. A lot of people watch at home, and this is a biggie. So, I do apologize for the hour. but I think it's information that the taxpayers need to hear, so.
And I think it benefits all of us if the taxpayers understand what is coming from our end and what the school's trying to do.
And questions on the part of the board. I mean, lest people feel that we just take everything, no questions asked, you know, we're all trying to do our due diligence by taking a close look and sharpening those pencils, so. Thank you, everybody.
Great job, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Moving along from the school department, which shouldn't take as long. Next up will be the senior center. Amy, see you're here. Tell us what you got. Guys are doing a great job.
Yeah, in fact, by way of introduction, one of the key areas of focus in this year's budget development process for the senior center was to truly understand the comprehensive budget, namely what does it cost the community to run the senior center. And I believe Amy and her team did a good job articulating those costs. And as part of that process, we then went on to Brian Hayes' question, what are the funding sources? And Amy did a good job identifying the grants and the specific support from the Friends of the Seniors. Also, part of this conversation involved, I think, interesting conversations or dialogue with the Friends of the Seniors relative to where they believe their support should be directed. And Amy, feel free to share those details with the board.
Well, working with the, first of all, I'm hoping we're a lot faster, but I think with the Friends, they are excited to support the senior center, but they are finding that they pay a lot of the salaries that work for the kitchen and for a couple of our programs. They would love to see, our concern, and I think it's valid, is that in the future, we don't want to be reliant on a support that could disappear on us.
Absolutely, yep.
And so we're hoping at some point that we'd like to start moving some of our salary line that the Friends pick up into our budget line. They're excited to help with programs, and they're very excited about some of the things coming up. And so our biggest thing is, as we move forward and as we start working towards our strategic plan for the future, that is one of the things that we're looking to do and change, is moving the salary line over to the town budget.
I mean, that's part of your operating expense.
Right.
What it costs to run the center. So it shouldn't be,
Exactly.
It shouldn't depend on, what, Apple Crisp sales or whatever.
And they do a lot, and then they certainly are very supportive of everything that we are doing at the senior center, so.
So it's looking like, based on the departmental budget we had from the last meeting, that town manager recommends for 2020 a total budget of $368,878. That's a 6.9% increase over last year, and most of that is in personal services. I assume that means personnel.
That's correct.
Okay. Are there questions on the part of the board?
So, Mr. Kamalo, I assume you've sat with Amy and gone through the budget and helped kind of along the way. And this is year one for her in budget stuff, and there's two sides to budget. There's the interaction and the numbers and the concern about salaries and things like that, which I agree with you. I think it's a legit thing to raise that we'll have to schedule and figure out. And then there's this, right? And this is sort of the body politic, if you will, and sort of the back and forth that goes on sometimes. And a lot of that's very rational and logical. Sometimes some of this can be irrational and illogical, but it's part of the process. So if something comes up in the next few weeks or a month that doesn't feel right, hang in there, we'll sort it all out, but some of that could be the irrational. That's just part of a dialogue of 17,000 people weighing in, either directly or through us or your colleagues, about what we should be doing in town. So don't get discouraged, I guess is my message over the next 2 months till we figure this all out.
Right.
Because there will be some stuff that goes on.
Okay.
Mr. Mello, do you have something to add there? You're looking like there's something coming.
Just again to underscore the point that if anybody was looking for the definition of building the budget from the ground up or zero-based budgeting, I think the senior center and the library are true examples of that.
Right.
We're working with new directors and we literally had to build each expense from the bottom up.
Okay. Okay, just one question on capital, if this isn't inappropriate. I know there's nothing specifically listed as senior center here, but when we were looking preliminarily at the different capital items, and one of the things that's under IT that we'll be discussing, I guess, with Josh, was a whole series of security cameras for the senior center. I believe, in the whole budget, we're talking, what, 23,000 or something like that, but still, I think some of them were upgrades, but some of them were going up to 10, maybe 7, I think 3 were outside of the number were on the inside, and I guess I'll hear more about it from Josh, but I don't know if you have any comment on that. I looked at this and I looked at the diagram with all these cameras, and I mean, we want our seniors to be safe, absolutely, but I kind of had a hard time understanding why we need this level of security cameras at the senior center. It seemed to me that there's not a lot of money there. There's been a lot of stuff with schools and school violence and shootings. I understand hardening our school sites, but I kind of personally had a little hard time understanding why we need all this surveillance in the senior center. I mean, if you're going to steal a teacup out of the thrift shop, or I just, can you kind of help me? Are you on board with this? Where's this coming from? It seemed like a bit much.
What we currently have is a system that was purchased, I guess, online back when the senior center was first. 06. And what it is a system that we cannot access. When we have had things disappear, and we've had issues with food disappearing out of our freezers, we've also had issues with some larger personal items just disappearing. We have that piece of it. We do have cash, flowing through the senior center because of our programs and all of that. But we also have concerns with people coming in off the parking lots where they might have wet feet, slip and fall, just making sure that we're protected as far as that as well. In the evening, we often have staff leaving the building in the dark, and we have no access or no way of making sure that their safety is there. So it's just building upon what we have, which is totally inadequate. Not only is it just not easy to work, primarily it's just not easy to work with. There's no way to go back and look at things, and we've tried in the past, and you could spend hours trying to get into just a short period of time, or they're not capturing things. So I think what we're just looking to do is bring us up to where the town is on the security, and making sure that our seniors are safe. We can see things in the parking lot. We often have situations with cars and people damaging cars by accident in the parking lot. And so just making sure that there's some way to hopefully cover that and to protect everybody is what we're looking at. Because what we have right now does not go outside, for one. It only has inside access.
Okay, I appreciate that, yeah.
Yeah, through the chair. I think that's a good point. Good comments too from Amy. The fact of the matter is that the request has been scaled back.
Yes, it has.
And also the request reflects the input from IT, senior center, as well as public safety.
Okay, good. No, I appreciate that, but this is why, we have these sessions for these questions, so we all understand it better. And, maybe Hopkinton PD could loan Titan to you to help out with that food situation, although that might not work.
That may not work so well.
Okay. Does anyone have any other questions, or are we good to go on the seniors? Good to go. Good. Okay.
Great.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you very much. Okay, and next up, let's see, where am I? Just lost my place here. Okay, library. Library is Heather. Thank you for hanging in there. We're running a little late.
Certainly.
Doing our best.
Well, I can say as a department head, I appreciate you schedule it out so I know which evening I commit.
Yes.
So the library budget this year, the increase, the largest part of the increase, I think, is due to the classification and compensation results. The pieces that are actually in there for us requesting increases, there's about $3,300 in staffing to address a few small areas where a little extra resources could really substantially improve the level of service we're able to provide. And there's also about $6,000 increase in the materials line. That's to help us keep abreast of state requirements on how much we're spending on materials, and we have to spend a certain amount to stay certified. Right now, the town is funding less than half of that, and we're just hoping to kind of keep abreast with it because it increases as our appropriation increases. And I don't want to hit a situation where I'm sitting in front of you in a future year at some point saying we need a huge increase because we can't make it up this year from other funding sources. So that's what that piece of the increase is about.
Got it. Board members?
How is the staffing these days? Is it covering the load, if you will?
We are doing reasonably well. With the increase in hours that we had some funding for that we're planning, hopefully in the next couple of months, we actually have a great opportunity to completely redo our desk schedule. So that is enabling me to take care of some of the pain points that we're experiencing just by scheduling people more efficiently. Things like meal breaks that we never had to have to worry about covering before because we were all on top of each other. Now we have to arrange coverage for them. The places where I'm asking for additional funding are things like, our teen librarian is running this amazing program schedule, but the times when she's running the events are, of course, the peak times for teens to be in the building, which means that she's effectively leaving a middle school classroom's worth of kids unsupervised in the young adult room to go run these events. We'd like to have an adult presence in that room to make sure the kids can get help and it doesn't get too rowdy in there. We're also finding, there are actually, I have to say, this is a little off topic, the teenagers, they're wonderful. They're some of our best patrons. They are so enthusiastic and they're well behaved and they're in every day and I just love them. We have great, great kids in this town. Another piece that I'm requesting, I think it's about $1,500, is to address one of the things that's come along with us getting much, much busier is that staff used to have the opportunity between patrons at the desk to do a little bit of extra work that would otherwise improve our services somewhere else. So plan displays, work on collection development, work on initiatives where we're doing something that's a little bit extra that people appreciate. And now it's patron after patron after patron, and the person standing in front of us always takes priority. So I would like to give staff a little bit of opportunity where we can put a substitute on the desk for a little bit of time if people need some project time to really work on an initiative that will, move forward a goal, help improve our service, maybe send somebody to a workshop to get some skills or knowledge they can bring back to the library so that they can, we can keep continually improving and continuing to provide what people are asking for. So those are kind of some of the places where, as we're settling in, we're seeking efficient ways to work. We're still finding a little bit more could really help us have an impact for the town in these regards. And again, that's about $3,300 across 3 initiatives for the whole year annually to make those improvements.
Good. Okay, I will ask real quick because I hit Amy with a question. Their IT does have a security camera thing here for the library as well. This is lumped in with the PD for a total of $43,800, but I mean, just off the top of the head, I can certainly understand there's weird stuff going on in libraries. You need to, no, you need to have all those, but do you want to just speak to that security camera thing?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. This is something I've been discussing with Josh. we're a public building. We're one of the few places where literally we welcome everybody as long as you're not causing a disruption for other people in the building.
Kids to be safe in there.
Kids, absolutely. And you don't want to really think about it, but there have been libraries where something happens in a back corner of the stacks. And just for staff purposes too, we have a much larger floor to deal with. You have to walk away from the desk to get to places. We aren't really concerned about theft so much. It doesn't, knock on wood, happen a lot here, and it's always something you deal with in the library, but it's making sure that if anything were to happen, we were to have a situation, we just would have a bead on that. We could see it happening from the desk if we had a feed to our computers, that kind of thing, so we can keep everybody safe.
So by and large, these are all new. This isn't, in the case of the senior, it's a lot of replacement of old stuff. These are basically new.
Correct. We didn't have this system installed with the renovation, and it's something that we've been continuing to discuss sort of in terms of, okay, you settle into a new building and you think, what's working and where could we use a little bit more? So it's been one of those things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
One quick one. We're going to continue to look through the years, through the year to expand hours and everything else as you see.
Yes. So with the funding, we do have the funding in this year's budget, so the plan is to be open until 9 p.m. Monday through Thursday, be open 10 to 6 Friday, to be open 10 to 4 Saturday, and to add 4 hours on Sundays, most likely 1 to 5. So that's in the works. I was actually sitting there looking at that schedule again while some of the earlier conversations were happening, so we're pushing to make that happen as soon as we possibly can.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Anybody else? Okay, excellent. Thank you
so
very
much.
much, and thank you for sticking with us.
Oh, absolutely.
And I know our Youth and Family Services, our director is not with us. Denise has moved on to new things. So do we have any presentation on that, or we just want to go with what we've got here on the...
I can answer the questions regarding the department. However, with the chair's permission, I see Mr. Terry is here.
No, let's just move on to Parks and Rec.
Yes.
Dan, come on up. We can go back to Youth and Family afterwards.
Thank you.
So, what do you got?
Do you have a copy of what they have? Is there a printed copy of I've got the, what we worked through for our budget, but I'm not sure I have the exact number. I don't need to, I thought this would be a good opportunity just to just thank the town for the past support that we've had. Our budget, the way it's written, we do have a subsidy from the town in order to run the department. We're very proud of how things have gone. We feel like we've stabilized the staffing there with Jay Gulfey as the director for the past 3 years or so. He's been excellent. He's built a great staff internally, and with him, we're very proud of how our assets are maintained, the Common, Sandy Beach, the programming there, and we do our best to keep that in great shape and offer services there to people that use that. We are in a great place with our relationships with the user groups, the Little League and soccer and the lacrosse programs, and how they utilize our fields and how we work with them. So I think we're in good shape. The budget that's presented in front of you is to continue to offer that same level of service to the town.
Questions on the part of the board?
Madam Chair.
Yes,
so
Mr.
Dan,
Hart.
how goes the governance or the governance body associated with the new fields?
Well, actually, one thing that we could use some help on with the selectmen is we do need to formalize a committee, and we spoke about that a couple of months ago, and my understanding is the selectmen needs to create that committee. The committee has been meeting informally and trying to more or less just organize how we're going to rent those fields. You mean with the schools, right, Brian?
Yeah.
But I think the cooperation between the Parks and Rec Commission and the Parks and Rec Department and the school department has been excellent. Just reacting to opportunities to rent, and just feeling its way through the first year of that, managing the time of use.
Mr. Kamala, was that governance committee part of the article that was passed at town meeting that created the fields or supported the fields in the first place?
The understanding that I have from talking to the town clerk was that the selectmen need to create that committee, and the charter is, we've forwarded there was a proposed charter for that committee, Brian, and I think that can get approved at any point in time. It'll be great if it was.
I thought that was adopted when we did the article at town meeting.
I'll have to review the motion that was moved. I know a draft charge was agreed upon leading to town meeting, but I don't remember whether the motion references the committee per se.
Well, we're doing the opening, the grand opening in March, so we should probably get going on that if we have to do so.
Okay.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So that should be an agenda item.
If it's necessary, I
If
think
it's
is what,
necessary.
it might turn out that it's not necessary, and I might
I
not,
thought town meeting said it. And
I might be wrong, so for whoever's keeping track of when people are wrong in here, is that was Brendan that was doing that? Thank you. Thank you.
I can assure you someone's keeping track.
Okay. All right, further questions on the budget that's been presented by Parks and Rec, anybody?
In fact, if I may, through the chair, subsequent to the submission of the comprehensive budget by the town manager to the selectmen, it has come to our attention that Park and Rec is actually asking that the subsidy, which was identified, I think, at approximately 157,000, be increased by 4,000.
That's right. We were approached by a group that's involved with the schools at our meeting last week, and yes, it was subsequent to the budget that had been submitted, and the commission voted to increase the budget by $4,000 in order to support a program at the schools that would at the high school for testing all students there for their heart condition to hopefully, hopefully not identify, but to identify any potential problems that occurred. It was a group that is also involved in a charity here in town, the Live for Evan Foundation, and they asked for our support. There was a lot of debate about whether it was part of what our budget is there for, but the commission did vote in favor of doing that.
If I may, to the chair, so why is Parks and Rec paying for something that went through the schools? Again, here we are mixing up budgets, and now you're talking about Live Forever, so is it a 501c3, or is it a for-profit company?
My understanding is it's a for-profit company that comes in and does the service, but there's an $8,000 fee for the service. The boosters picked up half of it, and the Parks and Rec Commission voted to include that in. It's something they want to do annually. It's something that the commission voted to put in as a budget item to support this program.
So it'll be 4,000 on the bottom line that you're showing here in the budget.
Yeah, what is that bottom line, Claire? I think it's moved a little bit.
For 2020, it is 599,876.
I think the number that we talk about is the subsidy number, so it's...
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It's 157. I believe the subsidy is approximately 157.
157 is the subsidy.
So, if I may, through the chair, so are you going to have to come up with $8,000 in subsequent years, because now you're taking this over from, so is Parks and Rec going to take this over from the schools and the boosters? Or who's?
Yeah, I don't think the schools are participating in the cost at all. I think it's the boosters that have, and I don't, that's a good question. I unfortunately, I don't know what the funding sources would be for next year.
Through the chair, perhaps the way forward would be for the board to direct the town manager and the finance team to review this in much more detail with both the schools as well as Park and Rec, and then report back at your next meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That would be good.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
The only other place where I see there are Parks and Rec articles on capital under the community preservation. Is that something that we should or could or touch on here tonight, or there's a number of them under CPA? So is that appropriate, Mr. Kamala?
Probably familiar with them if
Since the chair is here, might as well jump into that.
much as I'd love to come back, I'm happy to do it now.
You're not going to have too much of a report for youth and family, I'm assuming.
No.
And do you think that our discussion of our annual town meeting articles, given the hour, could be pushed up to another meeting?
If the board has any questions, I think with the CPC articles, might as well do that now, and we will give you a very quick rundown through the articles that we will be submitting.
Okay.
Because the board has done that before.
Okay, go for it, Dan.
I don't have them in front of me, do you?
I do. I've got 2 sheets of them. Oh, is that them? Okay. Okay, so top of the order here is, where did I go? Dog park.
Dog park. So,
1,000.
we certainly learned about process last year. We learned that the abutters of the location that we selected, once they were sufficiently informed about it, they were opposed to any development on that property. So we've selected a different location. The location's at Fruit Street. We've even met with the DPW director and narrowed down a spot that would be kind of on the, real close to where the field parking is. So I'm excited about that location because the dog park and the parking that goes with it could be kind of dual purpose. It could handle overflow for Fruit Street at those busy times. So that's $150,000. It's contingent upon receiving a grant for $250,000 from the Stanton Foundation. We had received that before, and our communication with the Stanton Foundation suggests that it should happen again. And just taking a real quick look at it again with our designer, who is very familiar with the Stanton Foundation, he suggested that 250 plus the 150 is more than enough. So I think while we're happy to have that 150, we may not access all of it.
So we got the grant from Stanton before, but we didn't use it because we didn't go through with the other site. So did we lose it, or is it just kind of on hold and then you have to sort of reapply?
We didn't use it. We couldn't use it because it was for that location.
Right. So you're starting over again. They don't just hold that money till you find another site. You're kind of starting over again.
No, but it's my understanding is it's a pretty common for them in towns to get pushback and need to find alternate locations. So they said that what happened here is par for the course, and I really, Jay Golfey is in contact with them, and so is Laura Hanson from the Parks and Rec Commission, and my understanding is that we're very confident that we'd get that grant. And this money is contingent upon that.
Yeah, right, obviously. We wouldn't spend it if you didn't get the other pieces. Okay.
Dan, are you very confident that you're not going to come across a whole bunch of other neighbors that don't want a dog park near them and rally the troops?
It's in the middle of this 253 acres, smack dab in the middle of it. So
there's no neighbors that can come up and...
They could, but I would hope that as a town, we can decide that the investment that the town made in the property would be used to benefit the whole town.
Okay, youth lacrosse wall for $25,000.
That's a youth lacrosse wall that would be located at Fruit Street. Estimated cost $25,000. People have been asking for something like that as a resource down there for years.
Excellent idea.
You say garage doors, you mean?
Yes, garage doors.
What is the Pine Field? I don't know of a Pine Field unless it's spelled P-Y-N-E.
Yeah, that's spelled incorrectly. It is P-Y-N-E. So down there, there's an opportunity there to put irrigation in and turn that into a really nice baseball field or softball field for Little League. It's it just has not been maintained really well because there isn't any irrigation down there, but we're confident that with the irrigation and the help we get from the folks that do maintenance, that they can turn it into a really nice field with that.
You gonna
minimal
leave the tires
investment
there though? You gonna leave the tires?
Of course.
I love the tires.
I like the tires.
Those are so
Funky.
cool. My kids would clown.
So that's the old softball field, where,
Yeah.
where the old Garner Brothers softball team, where Suds Crew made it.
Fix the spelling, that's really bugging me.
Fix what?
Fix the spelling, that's really bugging me.
We'll fix it. Apologize for that. Believe me, I'm not.
It's got pine blood in it.
Oh, gosh. Okay, access and development of East Main Street Recreation, $50,000.
It's $50,000 item to start to try to access that property down there on Legacy Farms, the recreation parcel.
Okay, now I read that, and there's a clause that says it's contingent upon the control of that piece of land being turned over to Parks and Rec. And my understanding with the host community agreement was that land was given to the town under the control of the Board of Selectmen. The Parks and Rec use may be a use, a good use, a principal use, but as far as I understand it, this land is controlled by the town. It's not to be controlled by one town board.
The conversations we've had at the Parks and Rec Commission were just that it's property that the town has anticipated controlling for many, many years, and we would like to somehow move the process forward. And we came forward with this request. There were selectmen at the meeting when it was discussed, and it was voted on. And I don't remember it being contingent upon the property being turned over to.
That's what it says.
Okay, then great. If I didn't remember the motion was that way, but then it should be. But personally, I think that this town has known that we were going to have that property for many years, and we need to start moving it forward with some sort of ability to use it, whether it be for trails, fields, any type of recreation use.
Hockey rink.
I'm not questioning the use, I'm questioning this idea that a piece of land is no longer under the control of the town and this board as it was put forth, but we're taking a piece of land and putting it under the control of one department. I think that's a problem.
So my understanding and recollection of the host community agreement was that parcel was always designated as a recreation-only parcel, and that Parks and Recreation would ultimately manage whatever goes in there as a recreation parcel.
Yeah.
I don't know what Ray's gonna say about that, and we'll have to figure that out, but I think it was always designated as recreation. I mean, it's depicted with 2 soccer fields or 3 soccer fields on the rendering that passed the town meeting in 2007 or 8, whenever it was. But beyond that, the Parks and Rec controls all kinds of land at Hopkinton. At one day, it's way back when the Board of Selectmen had, and Parks and Rec took over because that's their job. We don't control a lot of land, we just kind of own it.
Right,
We don't control it.
But weren't we talking about an international marathon center in the same spot that maybe
That all has to be coordinated with Parks and Rec, yeah.
Right, but just to get access to it, and we went through the Concom process to put a bridge up, just to put a bridge to get into that area with all of the conditions like we were talking about before with the schools, will be somewhere about $250,000. So the $50,000 to try and get in there is not, it's just gonna, it won't do anything.
I'm sorry, this wasn't for construction, this was to start the design of that process. And the other thing I'd like to point out is that the Concom approval that you mentioned was started based on a CPC grant that was applied for and initially managed by Parks and Rec.
I guess I'm not clear on the chair's comment about who owns the land. Hopkinton owns all the land.
Correct.
We own, but different entities manage that land. The schools manage the land.
I see a
The
difference
Parks and Rec
between
manage
the
land.
word manage and control, and maybe it's semantics, maybe it's a fine determination, but,
I can
have
say
a
this,
problem-
if we
problem with
tried
the
to
word.
build a school on the recreation land at the host, at Legacy Farms, that would be in direct violation of the host community agreement. If we tried to build a dog park, that would not be, because that's a form of recreation. If we tried to build a water tower, that would be a direct violation. So the recreation parcel, because there's other parcels for all that other stuff, but this parcel is a Parks and Rec managed facility in my understanding and recollection of the host community agreement.
Correct, but we have looked at that parcel, we modified it to allow the hockey rink way back with the idea that it could be recreational purposes and broadening it besides just athletic fields, which is what it started out as. And we're still looking at possibly a variety of uses. We're talking about maybe room for a marathon center, room for fields. It's been deeded to the town. If we decide to look to other uses beyond just what Mr. Terry's talking about, we shouldn't have to come to the Parks and Rec to ask permission to do things on that land. That land should be controlled by the town, with the Parks and Rec managing the Parks and Rec activities that are there, but there may be other activities, and that should come back to this board. I'm not willing to cede that to the Parks and Rec Commission.
My personal feeling is that this original plan for this to be a recreation parcel
Right.
was agreed to in 2007 or 2008.
Right.
We're talking about fiscal 2020 here, and there's been no movement whatsoever for the town to begin to derive a benefit from this property. What we're trying to do, my personal feeling, I don't care who it is that tries to let the town benefit from having this property, but we need to start doing that sooner rather than later. And if we could draw a line in the sand and say that's going to happen on some day, I'd be perfectly good with that. My personal feeling, I don't care if Parks and Rec does or the Selectmen do or anyone else, but I know that there's one entity that has made a move towards allowing the town to access that property. And that's it right there.
And I don't have a problem with what you're saying about the town starting to do something with that land, about getting some movement going, about using it. I have no argument with that at all. I think it's high time that it stops sitting there dormant. So I support that. I have a problem with a piece of this wording and why under the control of Parks and Rec was inserted. If that phrase was taken out, I wouldn't have a problem with this. But I am very leery of that phraseology.
And I'm not familiar with that phrase, so
Well,
the
it's in
phrase,
there.
so I apologize. I don't remember verbatim what the
Can
motion.
we direct town council to take a look at that?
I don't remember verbatim what the motion was at CPC.
Well, I know it was in the proposal that went to CPC when it was voted on, and I was there that night, and antennas went up, and it's remained in there, and so I think we should.
I wish we talked about it that night.
We've got between now and May.
There was some sort of
but I think
confusion. It would have been
that needs to
great
be
if we
looked
talked
at.
about it that night.
I think we could get language through town council and town manager's office that would solve the concern, but keep this a recreation-focused piece of land, and with the understanding we may need to access a corner to pull into something else in another piece of land, right? So
But there's a semantic
We can
thing, so
figure that
let's
out.
talk about that. Okay, good. What else is there? Moving along, there's not too much else, Dean. You had a.
Next is the EMC Park Playground.
Yep.
So we've got a.
60,000.
$260,000 to kind of redo the program. The playground, the current playground's about 20 years old. Playgrounds are done differently these days, and that plan would be something that's completely different. Big part of that is the ground is something that's much safer. It's nearly impossible to maintain it with wood chips. Maintain it safely with wood chips.
The other two things are both, I know they pertain to land acquisitions relative to some of the trails. It's put in under Parks and Rec, but I don't know if that's an appropriate thing to be asking you about or discussing. It seemed it's more a Upper Charles Trail thing, actually. And
Yeah, we did not sponsor those.
yeah, I don't know why it says Parks and Rec, because when I read the summary in our packet, they were both Upper Charles Trail issues.
Yeah, that's a typo.
Yeah, okay, all right. Okay, are there further questions from other board members? Thanks
you.
for hanging in for so long. It's
Yeah.
10 o'clock. Okay,
Thanks,
fine.
Dan.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Thank you. Youth and Family Services, Mr. Kamala, is there a rundown you want to give us? Thank you so much, Mr. Terry.
Yeah. I think the key is that the proposed budget is a reduction from our past years in terms of personnel services. We are now in the process of commencing the interview process to find the town's next Youth and Family Services Director, and we believe this budget will hold.
Okay. All right. So, Family Parks and Rec. Okay. So that completes all the departments that we were supposed to review tonight. Are there any other wrap-up or follow-on questions or any comments from members of the board on the budget as discussed?
None from me.
Everybody happy? Okay. Last item which we had not done was we did special town meeting, excuse me. Annual town meeting. The Board of Selectmen will review its own annual town meeting articles. I have a list of them. You want to just run through them quickly?
Yes, I'll do that very quickly. Sorry, Brian, do you mind?
10 o'clock. Getting kind of late.
I'll refer the board to the list of the potential ATM 2919 warrant articles. PEG Enterprise Fund, we've given the background information on this request, basically responding to the DOR guidelines in terms of how to handle the mitigation funds that the town receives from cable companies. And then Fruit Street property lease, this article came in through the Scouts organization, and they are asking if the selectmen would be willing to sponsor this article. Basically, you'll recall that when we went to town meeting, the list that was specified for the Scouting Association was for only 50 years. Was 50?
50 years was
Yeah,
voted.
yeah, 50 years is what was voted on. However, during that discussion, the Scouting Association expressed a desire to at least negotiate a 99-year lease with the town. So what the article is proposing is that, one, the selectmen sponsor this article, and the article specifically would ask that the lease be increased from a 50-year term to a 99-year lease term. Okay, we've given the explanation to the board regarding the Osmart Overlay District Zoning Bylaw amendments. And then with regard to the kennel bylaw, I just shared a very brief description with the board. The focus of the revisions are threefold: delineating the scope of kennel inspections performed prior to issuing a license and during any suspension or revocation proceeding. This issue became apparent when we were dealing with the greyhound issue. Number two, providing a standard for passing any such inspection, which shall include standards and limitations for applications of kennels that have previously had their license revoked or suspended. And then number three, to ensure that the bylaw is consistent throughout when referencing kennel inspections.
And Ray Mears is all over all this, right?
Yes. Yep. Main Street Corridor project easements, we're still going back and forth between Mass DOT and Town Council. Municipal parking, we've put this as a placeholder. And then number 7 is in the event that we did not accomplish it or reach a quorum for the special town meeting. Tax exemptions and abatements, we did explain this to the board based on the new laws. And then the short-term rental, I think what I sensed from the board was there wasn't a strong appetite for the town to move forward on this. I think our pitch is that only if perhaps item B, whereby the town can collect an impact fee of up to 3% on certain STR transfers, that's something that the board could consider, but we don't have enough time to research this. So am I sensing that we skip on short-term rentals, see how they work out in other communities? Okay. That's it in terms of explanation. Everything else is routine.
And obviously, this is the last time we're going to see this. We got between now and May to start to unpack some of these and talk about them in more detail.
Yep.
Are we okay for the time being? We'll return to this in the coming months? Feel set? And as far as going back to the agenda items, that discussion about the Parks and Rec Governance Committee, looks like that's something that the town manager will look into and figure out if this was already created, that Parks and Rec Governance Board.
Yes, we will look into that. Yeah. Again, in terms of the ATM 2019 warrant articles, I just want to make sure that the board understands that we're asking the board to sponsor the 3 OSMAT overlay district zoning bylaw amendments. Elaine, did the planning board take any position on any one of them, or?
They have submitted them into the warrant pending a public hearing.
Yeah.
So we'll go back to that too, depending on what comes out of their public hearing, or?
Okay.
Okay. Have I missed anything? Don't think so. Seeing as it's 10:05, we did the town manager's report. We're all set. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, everyone, please attend the special town meeting on February 11th. It's very important. And tell all your family and friends. If everybody brings one person, we'll take a big step.
So we don't have any